Welcome everybody to our April 2nd Town Board meeting on this beautiful warm day.
I saw it Monday night when I came home. I came through it tonight, but
And I've not been well.
so I didn't go through in the morning and see how.
Tonight, the public hearing on Colorado Springs is sworn testimony, and I think if anybody wants to speak on that, Letitia's in the back and sign in. At this point, we'll do the call to order and the Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight, one of my favorite pastors is here. We've talked about this before. Anyway, Pastor Jim Littleton from the United Methodist Church in Holly Springs, welcome aboard again. See, I can't say favorite, you know that.
Yeah, that's right. One of the favorites. Thank you, Mayor and City Council and town staff, and for our community gathered here tonight. I'm grateful to have this opportunity, and I just want to really reflecting today on generosity and what it means to be generous. And I keep a generosity journal. Is one thing I kind of do is my journaling. And one thing I've learned over my life is generosity leads to joy. When I'm generous and I can record generosity, and when people are generous to me, it just kind of leads to joy. I think generosity leads to joy in our lives, and I give thanks for the gift of generosity and for the joy we have as a community. Let us pray. Hey, Almighty God, we give thanks for the gift of tonight. We give thanks for the gift of this community called Holly Springs. God, we ask that you bless this time that we share together. We ask that you come into our lives and help us all just be generous and caring for one another, because when we're caring and when we're generous, that leads to joy. God, we ask you bless our elected officials. We ask that you bless our staff. We ask you help us continue to be a safe and prosperous community. God, we give thanks for all our town employees, those who lead, lead out in front and with the gifts of speaking and leadership, and those, God, who we don't ever see out front, but who work so hard to make our town what it is. We pray for the safety of our first responders. We pray for the safety of our public schools. We ask that we continue to be the community that you call us to be. God, we love and praise your name. Amen.
Amen. Good words, Pastor. Thank you. Item number 4, adjustment approval of April 2nd, 2019 meeting agenda, Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion to adopt the April 2nd, 2019 meeting with no changes.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Item number 5 is public comment period. Please keep your comments to maybe 3 minutes or so. And I'll open it with Donnie Wilson. Am I correct? I won't hold it against you for sitting by him.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Donnie.
Thank you. I'm Donnie Wilson of the Holly Springs United Methodist Church, and I'm representing our Church Beautification Committee tonight. I'm also president of our men's group and church council. And I'm speaking on behalf of our Beautification Committee. We are requesting a building trade permit waiver to the city, and we're going to build a gathering place in front of our church with a brick paver, a garden and benches, just in front of the church. And that will not only benefit our church, we feel, but we feel like will benefit the community and add beauty to the town and the community in general. So we're kindly seeking the waiver of this $150 fee. And our church is just turned 100 years old last year, and we're in the historic district of Holly Springs. And we've been, like I said, we've been part of the community for over 100 years. So this gathering place we're going to build is just in front of the narthex. We just completed our sanctuary renovation just last year to celebrate 100 years. And we feel like this is going to be a significant place for the community and for our church. And it's going to be located between the public parking and the men's house. So we think it'll add it's in a significant location in the village. And we as a church, we're a nonprofit, so every penny that we save counts. So we're just kindly asking for the waiver of this fee and we'd like to use that money to do other beautification on landscaping and things like that. So we would certainly appreciate any considerations and anything you can do to help us in this manner. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Donnie.
Thank you.
Susan Morgan. Oh, there you are. How are you? Name and address, please, Susan.
Excuse me?
Name and address.
My name's Susan Morgan. I live at 508 Wildwood Farmway in the Wildwood community. And today I wanted to talk about the noise ordinance. We really appreciate that that's going into effect. The community, though, is concerned with the exception for trucks because with Lowe's and Wegmans coming in right at our border, there's going to be trucks coming through the community 24/6. Lowe's says they're going to have about 10 trucks delivering. Wegmans says they do not have a distribution center, so vendors will be coming individually through the back of the community, or the back of the stores, 50 feet from the residents' homes. At midnight, the store closes. At 1 o'clock, their own vendors, their own distribution, comes in with freezer trucks, and they will ride 50 feet from the neighbors, park the vehicles, use backup noise, and keep their truck running for the freezer for an hour to unload. And this will happen 3 times each night, 6 nights. 50 feet from the neighbors, they will not get good night's sleep. So we really need to see what the town can do to help us so the community can thrive.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christine Quante. Haven't I seen you today? We've had a lot of ribbon cuttings lately.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kristen Quante with the Chamber of Commerce here in Holly Springs. I wanted to come before you tonight really for 2 reasons. Number one, to say thank you again for what you all passed in December, which was the beginning and the approval of Springs Fest, which is coming up April the 27th of 2019 right here in downtown to celebrate our downtown development. More importantly, to celebrate our past in Holly Springs and to embrace our future. I wanted to come tonight mainly just to say thank you for that, but also to say thank you to Randy's staff. A lot of them in this room, especially tonight, have been very involved with me in the last 3 to 4 weeks, especially these past 2 weeks. We've made some changes to Springs Fest, and I would not have known how to make those changes. Our chamber wouldn't have known how to make those changes if we didn't have the town staff directing us and giving us guidance and telling us what to do and how to do it. So we really appreciate that. There's a lot of hard work going on behind the scenes that obviously you all don't necessarily see, but you know what's coming and you know what it takes. And I think about a year ago when we thought about Springs Fest, I've said to Randy and a couple of you all who town staff there in this room that, wow, I just did not know. But we are looking forward to a great Springs Fest here along Main Street and in 2 different parking lots. We're expecting around 120 vendors, street vendors, lots of activities going on, and a race that's going to end here in downtown on Main Street that day. So thank you again. Just wanted to say we really appreciate it, and especially the staff's hard work. I don't even know how I would begin to tell you all thank you, and the event hasn't occurred yet. So thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
This is the point in time we'll close the public hearing and go to agenda item 6A, Autism Awareness Day. And a couple things about autism that I think most people know, but maybe not. April is World Autism Awareness Month, and the Society in North Carolina, in connection with the Holly Springs Police Department, will host the 3rd annual Holly Springs Autism Awareness and Acceptance Day event on April the 6th, which is coming up this Friday or Saturday? Friday, I think, this year. I want to voice support for this important event by proclaiming April 6, 2019, Autism Awareness Day in Holly Springs. We have partnered with this group in the past, and we again want to bring awareness to everyone about this particular issue in our society. I also want to thank Councilman Dan Barry, who was behind getting this together, and we appreciate that. We have a proclamation, And is Matt and Gail Valcho here? Good. Would you like to come forward, please? Approach the bench. I have the proclamation for you. I'll give it to you now. And if you want to say anything about autism, please do. There will be no extra charge. There's a proclamation. Just go to the mic, and name and address would be helpful.
I think you'll be fine.
Hello.
Who's this young man?
This is our son Brady.
Hi, Brady.
Do you want to say hi to everybody? Would you like to say a few words?
I have autism, and that means my brain works differently.
Would you put the mic down for him, please?
Go ahead, say it again.
I have autism, and it means my brain works differently.
Okay, that's right. His brain works differently. And basically, my husband Matt and I started the Holly Springs Autism Acceptance Day. That's what we like to call it, because as parents raising a child on the spectrum, we have awareness every single day. We've been pretty aware for the last 9 years or so since we've gotten our diagnosis. So we like to call it Autism Acceptance Day. And since we started this, this will be our third year this year having the event at the Holly Springs Police Law Enforcement Center, and we are so grateful that they gave us the space. They just said, you guys do it, and do it here, and we built it, and they came. It was like our own field of dreams. We've had about 350, 400 people come through, and we get larger every year. We have service providers, and we have in the audience today our wonderful young man, Gavin, who is our DJ, and his family is here. I know he's totally embarrassed right now, but we wanted Gavin to be a part of this as well because he is such a big part of us, and we became such great fans of him and his family. So thank you all for acknowledging this important issue to us and our family. And we thank you for your support. And thank you, Councilman Berry, for acknowledging and supporting us. So thank you, everybody.
We'll see you on
Thank you.
Saturday.
Yeah, and we'll see you on
Thank
Saturday.
Would you check and see if you have two proclamations? I'm missing one already. Hello? Do you have two proclamations or one? I think I gave her two.
Matt, can you see if...
Is there two proclamations there?
There's two.
Did they stick together? It was my fault. Aha! You saved me. We're happy that you have one. By the way, just to add what you said, we work with a group called Talks Together on Center Stage, and a lot of the kids, not a lot, but some of them have autistic problems. And I gave my cell phone number to one of them who is about 35 years old. He is exceptional, and he speaks with an exceptional voice. And don't give up the ship, keep at it, because he's like 35 or 40 years old, and he travels all over the country and makes money, he and his mom, for supporting autism kids. So anyway, enough of that. Okay, secondly, agenda item 6B, Arbor Day Proclamation. I'm going to turn this over to Matt Beard.
All right, good evening.
Good evening, Matt.
All right, so this evening, we'll be asking you, the mayor, and the council to recognize Arbor Day officially for the first time in Holly Springs. So in addition to showing that we as a community are committed to building and maintaining a community that values trees, we're also satisfying the last requirement for the Tree City USA designation that we'll be seeking in the coming months. We'll be submitting that application in September. The window opens for that certification. So this proclamation isn't coming just forward from staff, but also from the newly formed Tree Advisory Committee. So I guess at this point, I would ask all of the Tree Advisory Committee members that we have in attendance to join me up front.
As they're coming forward, the purpose of this is to, first of all, recognize the tree committee. Thank you for your service. Secondly, to do a proclamation again for the tree advisory committee and for all those involved. It designates April 26th, 2019 as the first Arbor Day in the town of Holly Springs. It completes a requirement for the Tree City, as Matt said, Tree City USA application 2019. The foundation, the manager of the Tree City USA program have April 26, 2019 as Arbor Day designated. And the Holly Springs Tree Advisory Committee will be celebrating National Arbor Day at the 2019 Spring Fling Festival held at Sug Farm on April 13th, 2019. So congratulations. And who should I give the proclamation to? There it is. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for trees.
Just want to get a picture with the mayor.
That'll be in the New York Times tomorrow. Agenda item 6C, recognition again, consensus 2020 overview and proclamation. That would be Gina Clapp and Tamara Ward.
All sorts of exciting things tonight.
My favorite.
It is. So good evening.
Good evening.
Census 2020, 1 year away. So we are really excited tonight to be here to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing as a staff in starting to get ready for Census 2020, unveil our census logo, talk a little bit about our outreach plan, as well as a memorandum of understanding with Wake County and a proclamation to declare April 1st, 2020 as Census Day in Holly Springs. So the first thing to get started with Census 2020 is it's really important for 3 messages to get out. That this census is going to be easier than ever to participate in. You can participate online. There's going to be a phone response system that you can respond by, as well as the traditional mail-in. So postcards are going to be sent out some point in time in March 2020, giving you the option of how you want to respond to the census. The census is safe and secure. Whether you respond by any of those methods, the online, the phone, or the mail-in, any of your responses cannot be shared with anyone. The person that tabulates it is the only person that sees that. They are subject to $250,000 fine and 5 years in prison if they share any piece of information with anyone. So the other thing is that is the same thing, that if you choose not to respond by one of those 3 methods and you have someone knock on your door and you provide that information, they are subject to those same rules. So we really need to make sure that people understand that any information that they provide to the Census Bureau is 100% confidential. The census is very important for everyone to participate in. Taking part in the census is a civic duty. It is something that you should be considered to be an honor to be able to do every 10 years. The U.S. Constitution requires a complete count of every person that is living in the United States on April 1 of that 10 year. And so that means whether you are a resident, if you are here long-term visiting family on a visa, if you are here on a work visa, a student visa, if you are here without any visa, if you are living in the United States, you're responsible to fill out that census form. About $650 billion a year is distributed from the federal government based on population numbers. So that is why it is important to make sure every person is counted on Census Day. From the state level, it is tens of millions of dollars every year. And then, of course, decisions we make is based on our population as well. Every 10 years, the U.S. House of Representatives is reapportioned based on the numbers that are counted through the census. North Carolina, we're on the fringe. We are anticipated to gain an additional seat this census. assuming that everybody gets counted and that the numbers are in our favor. So once again, it is important to make sure that we get the proper representation at the United States. And then also businesses use census information for deciding where they want to locate in strategic and operational decisions. So easy, safe, important. Remember those 3 keys as you are talking and meeting with people about the census. So the Census Bureau, every year, they put out their official logo. Last week or 2 weeks ago, they officially put out the Census 2020 logo, and we are mandated to use this in any presentation that we do, and it has to be in the lower right-hand corner of any slide. So the Census Bureau really is very specific on the use of the logo and making sure that there is a consistent message that is being sent out throughout the entire country. And then internally, our own communications and marketing department has been busy. And Ms. Tamara has put together a beautiful logo. Several of us have been working with her in taking a look at it. And we think this is an awesome logo for Holly Springs as we start marketing our information out to our residents. So with that, you're going to start seeing whenever census presentation from the town of Holly Springs, you're going to see the bottom look pretty similar to this, which will be our standard banner as we move forward with census marketing. So preparation for Census 2020 began in 2011, believe it or not. Every year, we are required by the federal government to respond to a boundary annexation survey. Every year, we report on all new annexations and population increases that we are aware of within our town limits. Every year, we report new construction starts to the Census Bureau, and they do annual estimates of population and also helps them prepare for the decennial censuses. The biggest project that we do in preparing for the census is the LUCA, or Local Update of Census Addresses. This was something that we completed last year. The planning department takes this on. It takes a staff person probably close to 3 months to complete as their primary responsibility during that time. And what this is we have to ensure that we report to the Census Bureau every known address in town. There are properties and structures that we find that we may not otherwise know of, but once again, any information that is found doing work for the U.S. Census Bureau is held confidential. We cannot turn in any information to police, to fire, to any other town department, to any other staff person. We sign confidentiality agreements with the U.S. Census Bureau that we will not share any information that is identified in work through this program. And so the Census Bureau is requesting that town council and local government officials to be the ones out sharing the message about the census. Easy, safe, important. Our residents and people in our community, they know who you are, they trust you, and they trust a message when it comes from you. So we are going to be looking to you to help us get this word out in the next year. And I'll turn this over to Tamara about some things that we're looking at doing.
Good.
Thank you, Ms. Clapp. Good evening, Mayor and Town Council.
Good evening.
Thanks. In listening to Ms. Clapp speak, I think it's easy to understand why the census is so important and why getting a good count is so important. But not everybody is here tonight, although we've got a great crowd, and I'm really happy to see our community showing up tonight. Not everybody's here tonight, and not everybody's going to watch the council meeting video. So I get to talk to you about how we get to share that message with our community. And I've kind of broken down our communications plan into 3 different periods of time, as you see at the top of the slide. Getting ready, and then go time in March and April, and then wrapping up. So right now we're in the getting ready stage. You might have noticed sporadic posts throughout the past maybe about a year, maybe a little bit more than a year, saying we're preparing for the 2020 census. And then yesterday was kind of a big day. We launched a webpage. We shared some federal Facebook posts and a tweet. And then we are also going to share about the census in our April newsletter. So as we get ready, as we get closer to the 2020 census, you're going to see these sporadic posts increasing in intensity. You're going to see our presence in the community increasing as well. And at the bottom, I've listed a whole bunch of different ways we plan on getting this message out to our community. Really, again, just starting now, but very much ramping up going into March and April. March is when the federal government will send mailers to residents, and then April is when we expect census workers to be going door to door to people who did not respond to the census. So in addition to all the traditional ways that we usually get messages out, our water bill newsletter, our website, text and email messages, and social media, we have some really creative things planned as we get ready for the census. So digital displays, the ones that you see when you walk into town hall, on the display in the lobby, cultural center, hunt center, team park. And then something that was really successful during the 2010 census, as Gina was mentioning, were these window clings that you see in business storefronts. And they're kind of, they're kind of like stickers, but they peel off really easy. It's just a way for people in our community to see the census and to gain awareness that's coming up. So we want to build on that success from the 2010 census when we got a really great count, and hopefully get another great count this year using some of that same logic. Also, we definitely plan to get out in the community at events that the town sponsors, but also getting out with local nonprofits, speaking arrangements, getting out with neighborhood groups. You will see us getting out into the community and sharing that message. Printed information, promotional items, not just to give out at our town events or at our town facilities, but we're really thinking one of the kind of sub-messages that we want to get out is that you don't just count adults in your household. Sometimes the undercounted people that don't get counted are children and teenagers, infants. As Gina said, we want to count everybody. So we're thinking of partnering with schools, hopefully some pediatrician offices, and getting those printed materials out that way too. Email signatures is another way that we want to gain awareness. You know, when a town employee sends an email, often you'll see our town logo in the signature line. Also seeing the census logo with a link is a helpful way to get the word out. Signage, of course, and information in town facilities. We're looking into video advertising, maybe at the local movie theater before you see a movie. You can see a video preview talking about the census. And then also complete count events. And this one's a kind of exciting one where we plan a bunch of kind of smaller events out in the community during March. And so going out to different geographical locations, offering coffee, maybe muffins, and while people are there, we'll have internet devices and they can complete the census right there while enjoying a muffin and a coffee with all of us.
So if you can't tell, we are very excited about this, and it is very important for our community. And so one of our big partnerships is going to be with Wake County. Wake County is the organization locally that sets up the local Complete Count Committee. It is a multi-jurisdictional effort amongst all the municipalities within Wake County. This decennial census, they are starting something new and seeing how it works. They're actually going to be hiring a dedicated part-time staff person to assisting with the marketing of Census 2020. One of the things, and an important reason for us to partner with Wake County and to join the Complete Count Committee, is that they will be providing multilingual materials. Holly Springs, we are getting a greater percentage of our residents that are not English speaking as their primary language. And so having materials in different languages will help us market and get that information out to people, making sure people understand that the census is easy, safe, and important. And then Wake County staff will also come out and join us in any of our pop-up events or other events that we would like to do in marketing Census 2020. And so Wake County has requested each community to offer a contribution to the Complete Count Committee. This year, we still have some additional funds available in the Planning and Zoning Department budget. And so we are recommending a contribution of $6,000. Wake County did not give any specific amount, but that is a similar dollar figure to what our neighboring communities have been including in their budgets to offer Wake County for this service. And then also part of the Complete Count Committee, next week, Wake County will be adopting a resolution creating the Complete Count Committee, as well as adopting a proclamation declaring April 1, 2020 as Census Day in Wake County. Once they create the complete count committee, they will be seeking volunteers, and as we know what exact positions they are looking for, I'll be back to you. I know that they will probably be looking for a council representative, staff representative, as well as some community representatives. And so with that, we have a proclamation.
I love following these two people because instead of me having to read 9 whereases, I can just say, now, therefore, I, Mayor Dick Sears, do hereby proclaim that April 1st, 2020 is Census Day in the town of Holly Springs, North Carolina, in witness thereof, and I'm going to give you the proclamation, and thank you for helping me. Thank you, Gina. Let's give him a hand.
Gina, I have one quick question.
Yes.
The packet said the staff is recommending $4,000, and the slides here said $6,000.
I would go with the packet.
Okay, I was just wondering because they're different.
No, it's
Yeah.
good.
Yes,
Good.
4,000 is the right
Is
number.
it? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Good point. Okay, agenda item 7A, request and communication, the street tree maintenance policy. Matt, you're back.
All right, thank you.
Give it just a second, please. Thank you all for coming. I hope it's not raining. It might be snowing. I hear you. Okay, Matt.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the next item before you is the street tree maintenance ordinance proposal. We're not asking for a vote this evening. We'll be, it looks like we'll be trying to come back on the 16th. That's kind of what we're shooting for. If there is feedback that we need to make additional changes, we may reconsider that date, but for the time being, that's what we'll mark on the calendars. So the proposal is to replace Town Policy P39, which I'm assuming everybody has memorized. That was our street tree maintenance and enforcement policy from 2012. And what we would be replacing it with is an ordinance that would be put in Section 14 of our town code of ordinances. So the difference there is that the ordinance is much easier to amend going forward. We can make tweaks as we see any changes to how the town wants to invest in whether it's replacement or maintenance. There's a number of different items that could come into play going forward that we just don't see right now. So this evening, we're asking you to consider the request and to direct staff and the tree advisory committee that you met earlier on additional revisions prior to coming back for the vote. So it all kind of started with the directive from council to really look at that policy. The policy as it sat was putting the onus on the homeowner for essentially the sole maintenance and replacement responsibilities for their street trees in front of their houses. After implementation of that policy for a number of years, and myself having been on the end of the phone when residents would call in asking about it, it seemed that there was a need for another look at it. Diving deeper into it, we kind of, as the town council and administration pushed for was, do we really think this is the way that we as a town want to enforce our street trees? And deciding that perhaps the replacement of street trees should not be put on the homeowner, but that the town should contribute at the very least. So the Tree Advisory Committee was formed to satisfy the tree board requirement for the Tree City USA designation. One of the items that they've been looking at through the monthly meetings we've been having this year is the street tree maintenance ordinance. We prepared a draft for them to review, and that draft had a lot, kind of a harder stance on the town performing nearly all maintenance and replacement and removing the responsibility for the homeowner. Coming out of those TAC meetings, Tree Advisory Committee meetings, was the idea that perhaps the town should be performing some maintenance. They agreed with that, but that the maintenance should be functional in nature, meaning trimming away from street lights, maintaining clearance at intersections for sight triangles, real safety-related issues, not blocking street signs or traffic lights. And that the replacement of street trees, while it's a great idea, right now should not be the town's responsibility. So what we're coming forward with is kind of a practical next step as we see it, moving from what we had included with the previous policy P39 and moving towards the ability to have town-initiated larger scale maintenance and, in the future, tree replacement. So the ordinance as it is could easily be amended, as I stated, to include additional programs if we saw fit to go out and do either partnerships with neighborhoods or pilot programs where we treat a large grouping of trees that have been identified as diseased, or putting in trees in neighborhoods that maybe didn't have them when the developers built out. So while that is not included in the proposal right now, we have the ability to move forward with a pilot program if you saw fit in the budget to create that. So really what we're asking for is some feedback on what we've brought forward, and is this the direction that you would like to go? Has this gone far enough in the direction that we were looking at months ago, or does this need something else?
Comments?
Matt, can you share, when we were in the meeting, when we talked about it, that the concept that the town would take care of the trees was a great concept, but the number of trees and the money it would cost was not feasible, and that's really why the committee had recommended to not disappoint, because it would be disappointing actually more people with that version. Would that be accurate?
Yes, so that was kind of where the idea of the pilot program kind of comes in, is do we really want to put in a statement that the town is going to come out and replace your tree if it's sick? Because we have based off of our street tree inventory that's been kept up over the last several years, we've seen a massive amount of disease amongst our street tree population. And if we were to all of a sudden say, we'll take care of it, we don't have the resources in place to go out and take care of it. It would be years before we would see a chunk taken out of that. So yes, I mean, we see it as kind of a first step towards that, and we are seeing a increased buy-in from homeowners associations into the maintenance of their own street trees, and that's kind of something that we factored in. TAC factored in to some of their recommendations, was if all of a sudden we say we'll take care of it, does that maintenance on their end stop and the problem gets worse? So we're kind of juggling a lot of different things.
The tree committee has an exceptional amount of knowledge, and it's amazing how quickly they jumped in and started looking at all of this. So I'm kudos to them, an impressive group.
I want to add one thing. Pruning your trees when they're at face level is very important. And occasionally, in our neighborhood, I nicely ask, can I cut down this one limb? Because the next time I break my neck, I want to talk to you about it. It's a very simple process. Usually it's a small limb coming down 5 feet high from the ground, something like that. So that's an important part of this whole thing, especially for those of us who are very tall. So I just want to mention that. What else?
Are there penalties associated to the, as you say, the adjacent landowner not taking care of the tree, not pruning, or?
So, yes, within the current proposal, and we've been working with our town attorney on this as to, what we can and can't issue fees on. As an ordinance, it could be treated the same as any other essentially zoning condition, and we could apply a fee if compliance was becoming an issue. Historically, the town has not really gone after individual residents to get into compliance. It's obviously cannot speak to the direction going forward. But yes, as part of the proposal, there was a $750 fee, which is calculated based on the replacement cost of a tree that would meet our minimum size and species requirements to be a street tree.
Yeah, that seemed to be more specific to a damaged tree or a tree cut down or not replaced, as opposed to just pruning to the numbers that are here in the ordinance. That I don't know.
Yeah.
Just thinking more means and cost. Some residents may not have the means, may not have the ability to prune to that height, or just have 10 street trees on their yard. That adds up. The other question I have is disease trees. It's been in the case in my neighborhood and maybe others, because there are similar trees around or on the same side of the street. Treating one tree would be ineffective as long as the other trees remain diseased. Is there any accountability of that in the ordinance to not treat a diseased tree just because you'd have to treat all 50 on a street through multiple residences?
I don't believe that that's a question that we've answered yet.
That's a good question. I agree. See it. Could we check into that, Matt? I would quickly agree. We have an area in our neighborhood that has, I think it's pin oaks, that get very bad almost every year. Why they're still alive, I'm not sure, but that's a good point.
And also, does the ordinance address the builder putting in the wrong trees or the subsequent fallout of that? I know, again, in my neighborhood, we had incorrect trees planted that resulted in a lot of headache later on. And it seems a bit unfair for the homeowner to pay for the sins of the builder.
Right. So essentially, the way we have it written, if your tree is healthy but it's the wrong species, if it's the wrong species, we want you to leave it if it's healthy. If it's causing an issue, we can, in that case, likely work with you and find a replacement. You could remove and put a new tree in at the next planting season. But in terms of issuing, we're not going to go out to the houses that have the wrong tree planted and say, hey, you need to cut this down and replace it. If a tree is healthy, we want it to stay wherever possible. But does that answer your question?
Matt, you might want to address that the town is now verifying with landscape plans prior to the certificate of occupancy that the right tree is planted in the neighborhood, whereas, the examples from the past were back when the town didn't really do that. And so,
Yeah, exactly.
so the likelihood of going forward of having the wrong planting is very, very low. I mean,
Right. And I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of the trees that were wrongly planted are sick now and are likely to die and be replaced going forward. So essentially, what people were putting in was red maples. And over half of our trees, counting as street trees, are red maples, and a large portion of those have a disease called gloomy scale. There is treatment available for that, but a lot of these trees are kind of too far gone at this point. So I guess we're getting the opportunity to get the right trees in.
That leads me to my next question is, how does the town determine the health of the tree? I mean, do you have to wait till the last leaf is gone, or realizing that a tree is, even though it may be somewhat leafy, is too far gone, it seems better to just replace it at that time? Is that something covered in the ordinance, or is it case by case, or how is that handled?
Yeah, thankfully we have some pretty fantastic staff in the both Public Works and Parks and Recreation departments. We actually have a certified arborist on staff in the Parks and Rec department who is able to help us ascertain the actual health of a tree rather than just a layperson going out and saying, well, there's no leaves on it. It may have been a particularly dry summer and the tree got hit hard and it'll be fine in the spring. Who knows? They have that know-how to go out and make that judgment call, and we can work with the property owner at that point.
Those are interesting points. With those questions in mind, I'll go back and relook at this, because we have a meeting next Monday before the next time this comes up. We could kind of look at it with those questions. I saw we just received another email from somebody that asking questions, so these are great points. We can bring them up on Monday.
So I was an HOA president for 5 years and had the luxury of reminding my neighbors that it was their responsibility to replace their trees and prune them and things like that, largely because our covenants were worded as such based on the town policy directing that be the homeowner's responsibility. My concern is not so much for established neighborhoods that have covenants already, it's enforceable. My understanding is that whatever document is more restrictive, whether it be the neighborhood covenants or our ordinance, is the one that could be enforced. Maybe that's right or wrong, but my concern is that if we're loosening the language from this being a town responsibility, or I'm sorry, the homeowner's responsibility to strongly encouraged, that it opens up some ambiguity in how the ordinance is going to be applied for new neighborhoods that don't have their covenants yet, that aren't platted. And I'm kind of on that line of where do we want to be? We're kind of like in the middle of, do we want to be town responsibility or homeowner's responsibility, but strongly encouraged, I don't think is going to hold up if we find somebody $750 in court and they fight that, and then, well, it was encouraged. I don't have to do it as a homeowner. You're just encouraging me to replace my tree.
Right.
So the homeowners association may be able to help enforce that if it's in their covenants, but I just think we've got to kind of pick what we're doing. Are we going to be investing in this as a town program and putting funding behind it to do it as a town responsibility, or are we going to rely on what we have, saying it's the homeowner's responsibility, which to date has sort of worked with all the homeowners associations being able to enforce it?
Right. Yeah, and it's come up. The issue comes down to kind of property rights and what you can and can't make somebody do technically off their property. So it's, yes, with the ordinance, we're hopefully clearly outlining what the town is going to be doing and essentially putting it out there that this is what we would encourage our homeowners to do, but is there really any way to call them on that?
I guess my point was to me, it wasn't very clear what the town is going to be doing in the document. We basically just reworded homeowner's responsibility to strongly encourage instead of being a responsibility. So that's my confusion, is what is the town going to do, and are we going to have some sort of methodology to prioritize requests for the pilot program when they come in to replace trees? How do we determine to replace the tree and Councilman Villetsen's neighborhood before, mine. Like, how do we catalog those and determine that? That's those steps, and maybe they don't belong in the ordinance, but some additional clarity, I'd like to see how we're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt, how many red maples that we have that are in distress or potentially?
I did not bring my numbers with me.
I attended that meeting, the last one. I think it was around 1,200.
That sounds right, because it was, we had over 13,000 data points, so 13,000 street trees in the inventory. There were over 6,000 that were red maples, and then of that, I think, it was
1,200 trees that are in distress right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That are red maples alone. So I think that number was kind of being put out there as if we had just decided to pick red maples because they were the biggest problem right now. This is, what it would take to address that.
Right.
And just having something to go with.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
What else? Just a reminder to everybody, a couple years ago, we went through the process of trying to help this tree situation, and we now have, it's in the background, 2 additional street crew members in Public Works, and when I get calls, it's usually because a tree has grown over a street lamp or whatever and they can't see. We're fixing that. It's a work in progress. I can't tell you that everybody in the whole town is taken care of already, but we're working on it. So just as a point of reference, they do grow over the street lamps sometimes, and we try to fix that.
And I know over the last couple of years, we put a lot of work and a lot of time and education into those people who work on our trees, because we did have in the past where some trees were trimmed by the town and ended up dying, and it became an issue. So, thank you for that, to continue to educate.
Okay. Anything else? Good for now?
Yep.
Good for now?
Okay.
Keep us informed, Matt. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Agenda item 8A, public hearing, 18 PUD 01, Carolina Springs Planned Unit Development. And this is a Planned Unit Development number 18, that the planning board is here for a joint presentation. So I turn it over to Sean and Rachel, maybe.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Good evening, council. As the mayor had indicated, this is a joint public hearing with the town council and the planning board. This doesn't happen very often. We don't have many planned unit developments that come before the town council. But the joint public hearing really allows the town council and the planning board to sit together to hear about the proposal, hear the discussion at the same time, and hear from the public before it goes into the more formal review and decision process of going back to the planning board for a recommendation before it comes back again to the town council. So this joint public hearing process is unique to planned unit developments. And as I had indicated at the end of this public hearing, the motion would be to forward the planned unit development application to the planning board at their April 23rd meeting at the end of this month. Just to orient you to the property is in the northern part of the town's jurisdiction, just south of our annexation boundary line agreement with the town of Apex. Located south of the interchange of NC 540 and Viridia Parkway, which turns into Old Holly Springs Apex Road going south towards the Target Shopping Center. And this is just north of the 12 Oaks neighborhood. So a planned unit development, as I said, it's not a common type of zoning that we see in Holly Springs. The last time we had a new planned unit development that was approved was back in 2005 for Main Street Square. So it's been well over 10 years since the town council has looked at a new planned unit development in Holly Springs. It is a type of zoning that is used to encourage creativity and innovation in design, allows for better integration of land uses and open space with high-quality design standards. Essentially, it is a way to develop a piece of property that is outside of the normal regulations of our Unified Development Ordinance and kind of supplement for those areas where maybe our Unified Development Ordinance doesn't work in a particular situation. It does establish the permitted uses and development standards for a property, so it functions much like our Unified Development Ordinance in that it sets all of those standards for the development of the property. This is the property again on the screen with our future land use map. As you can see, the future land use is currently designated as business park. The applicant has submitted a subsequent land use plan amendment to change that designation to mixed use, and that public hearing would be before the town council next month as well, but is not the subject of tonight's conversation. Just to show you the existing zoning of the property is highlighted in orange. There are 3 zoning designations currently on this property. You can see a portion of it is zoned LB local business. This is US 1, so that's the portion that's adjacent to US 1. The large majority of the property is currently zoned R20 residential, and then a smaller portion of the property along Old Holly Springs Apex Road is currently zoned R30 residential. So just to give you some quick details about the project, it is a little less than 400 acres in total, and the applicant is proposing a total gross density of 4.5 units per acre across the entire 400 acres. The maximum number of residential dwelling units will be 1,700, with the minimum amount of non-residential uses 340,000 square feet. The proposal is to separate this property into 4 development districts: a town center district, which would be neighborhood, local, and regional commercial uses; an innovation district for recreation, athletic training, education, hospitality, and business uses; a village square district for mixed use and mixed residential uses; and a neighborhood district for strictly residential uses. And this is the proposed master plan that outlines where those areas will be located. So along Old Holly Springs Apex Road, you would start with the town center district. That would be the commercial area. You would then move into the innovation district, as well as the village square district. Crossing the creek here, again, village square district, and then the neighborhood district along the western and southern portions of the property. Additional development standards that are proposed with this planned unit development. Parking generally will follow our current UDO requirements. However, they are providing for a reduction of 25% given the mix of uses that they are proposing. Loading standards would follow our UDO requirements. Landscaping will generally follow the same requirements that are in our current UDO. However, they are proposing some minor alterations for plant unit values and landscape materials. They are proposing their own tree preservation requirements. This project first came in for review prior to the town council adopting our tree preservation requirements in our ordinance, so they're a little bit different than what our current UDO has. They're looking for a 15% total preservation area of the property with priority to stream buffers, floodplains, wetlands, and perimeter yards, as well as a goal to have a 20% tree canopy once the entire project is complete. As part of a planned unit development, we require 10% of the project area to be dedicated to recreation, so that's 39.2 acres. They're proposing pocket parks, amenity areas, squares, plazas, trails, and public greenways, as well as a town park dedication of 25 acres. Here's the master plan again for this property. You can see these black dotted lines. These are the proposed trails and greenways through the site. The town park, the 25 acres, is located in the neighborhood district along Woods Creek Road here. And then all of these little symbols indicate the different areas where those neighborhood parks or plazas would be located throughout the project. With that, I will invite Rachel up from our engineering department to go through some of the engineering requirements for this project.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. So in your packets tonight, you'll find the plan sheets with utility layouts and some transportation improvement information. So we'll start with utilities. With the planned unit development project, public utilities will be provided to the site. And this is in accordance with our engineering, design, and construction standards and our town ordinances. So public water will be extended from Woods Creek Road along the property frontages and into the site, so Woodfield Denton Road, and it will stub here to the property line. And you'll notice that there's water stubbed to several adjacent properties to the site. In addition to potable water, reclaimed water will also be extended along Woods Creek Road and through Woodfield Dead End Road. And then, let's see, so we're gonna scroll down here. Sorry, it's a little blurry there. In addition to that, gravity sewer will be provided throughout the site. And you can see that in green. All right, and we'll have several areas where upstream properties are being served by the gravity sewer infrastructure that will be installed with this project. In addition to that, there are 2 new pump stations you'll see here identified on the site, which I'll go to this slide. So the 2 pump stations are identified on the plans that you have before you, and there are 2 options identified for the force main route, option A and option B. Both of these ultimately discharge to the water reclamation facility, but the alternative or the preferred alternative will be determined with the development plan stage. So there was an extensive sewer study and pump station study report that was completed with the planned unit development project that reviewed these alternatives and kind of how they relate to one another. There's one option that is several more 1,000 feet in length. So that will be further evaluated and finalized as the development plans progress. All right. There's also a traffic impact analysis completed with the planned unit development project. There were 9 intersections studied. And here is the kind of the vehicular circulation layout. And you can see the different markings in the legend to identify the cross-sections that are being planned to be constructed with the project. So along Old Holly Springs Apex and Woods Creek Road is a 4-lane median divided thoroughfare. And as we progress up Woodfield Dead End, there are cross-sections included in the packet that show a 2-lane collector with bike lanes and on-street parking. And I should mention also the arrows here at the property line symbolize stubs that will serve these adjacent properties as they develop as well to meet our interconnectivity requirement. All right, so this is a summary of recommendations that was a result of the traffic impact analysis. There are a couple items I noticed here. We received the final copy just a few days ago, so we can update this and send it to you if you'd like. And I believe the consultant was working on an additional just supplemental information regarding these improvements and what it looks like as the project builds out. So you'll notice that the applicant studied all the way to the bypass, also including the eastbound ramps and westbound ramps for 540, and also out on the southbound and northbound US 1 ramps. There are improvements planned for the intersection of Woods Creek Road and Old Holly Springs Apex Road, Bennett Knoll and Old Holly Springs Apex. And it's not shown here, but at the intersection of Bennett Knoll Parkway and the bypass, the applicant is paying a fee in lieu of a 3rd right turn lane from Bennett Knoll Parkway onto the bypass. So I just wanted to give you that summary of what is going on here in this figure. Also, I wanted to note, it's not shown here, but we have an infrastructure reimbursement agreement that will come before you at the town council meeting.
All right. At this time, if there's any initial questions for staff, otherwise the applicant has prepared a presentation and we can answer questions as they come up if you have questions for us.
Okay. And again, just for the record, name and address, you know the go. Please.
We have a large group. My name is David Stallings. I'm the owner of Capital Properties in Shenandoah Homes. We are the petitioner asking for the zoning for this project. And then, of course, with us we have We have Withers and Ravenel who's done a large part of the work, Duke Energy, who's the seller of the property, and then Remy Kemp and also Calvert Sports Academy, who's going to present today and talk a little bit about our community. Okay, so you know where the community is located. I want everyone to understand that Carolina Springs is a unique opportunity to create a walkable, mixed-use community, integrating commercial, retail, recreational, and residential uses. And so I want you to imagine a place in Holly Springs where, without your car, you can pick up your kids from school, you can take your kids to play hockey or other afternoon activity, have afternoon exercise walking along a local greenway trail with a neighbor, check your relatives into a hotel for their visit to see their family, go to the grocery store, get your hair cut, pick up your dry cleaning, see a movie or musical performance, have dinner with friends and family, and then later have a beer or a glass of wine with coworkers, and finally be able to walk home. So that's what essentially Carolina Springs is, and that's what I'd like to kind of explain to you as we go forward. So in this presentation, we're going to cover several things. First is why a PUD, why a planned urban development. We're going to explain the sense of place and what Carolina Springs is to the community and to Holly Springs. We're going to talk about its location and why its location is very important in order to use existing highway infrastructure while not creating a large amount of additional pressure on municipal roads, which I know is a large problem with a lot of local municipalities, and especially with Holly Springs in certain areas. We're going to talk about how it's largely a retail, commercial, and mixed-use community. This is not your normal residential neighborhood. It is a unique combination of density and affordability with a shared common community open space. Greenway trails, connectivity, and walkability within the subdivision. The Calvert Sports Academy and Development Center, which is a wonderful addition to not only our community, but we believe to Holly Springs. The traffic impact analysis will be represented by Remy Kemp, as you've already seen it through your local staff. And then the future business park, which we feel this subdivision or this community will open up a future business park available to Holly Springs. There's a large economic impact, which we'll touch on, and then finally a summary. I'm going to turn it over to Brian Richards over at from Withers and Ravenel, and he's going to talk about the PUD as a community and why we've picked a PUD in order to develop this project.
All right, thank you, appreciate it. I will just tell, our whole team is super excited about this project. I mean, it's just really an opportunity to create a special place in Holly Springs. Why do we use a planned unit development, or a PUD, as we all call it? The reason for doing this is so that we can create a compact mix of uses, so that we can prioritize land, utilize land, so we can preserve more open space, preserve more trees, focus areas where we want to do it. And then what that does, that also enables to create more walkable communities, so people can walk and easily get around. These spaces aren't as vast. We're sharing community open space. We're sharing greenery and community space. It's also going to give us the chance to create and provide a variety of housing types for all citizens, all residents of Holly Springs, those new and those coming here and those who are already living here. And it also gives the opportunity to provide a place for people who are aging out, aging into different types of uses, so we can have that wide variety of housing types that also gives you a sense of affordability. One of the reasons we do a PUD is it enables us to create different size lots that create more walkability, but also give us that range and that variety to be able to create new product that can be utilized for all people in different phases of life. And then really what it gets is kind of touching with what staff said, what Sean said, the ability to kind of create new opportunities, new design, more cutting edge design, so that we can create a real sense of place. And what we really want to do is we want to have a streetscape that people walk down and they know, hey, this is Carolina Springs, this is where we live, this is Holly Springs, this isn't just every other place that I've been, every other subdivision. Create places where you're going to create memories with your kids, memory with your grandkids, places I'm going to go say, hey, I remember going and playing in that Village Square fountain. I remember that. Places for people to gather, to have events, and then also places to be able to walk. As David said, you'll be able to walk and do all of your daily activities without having to get in a car. If you look at those transportation studies, and I'm sure Remy Kemp can tell me how wrong I am, but really so much of that traffic is really on the weekends because I got to go do everything, run all my errands. It's not just that rush hour transportation, it's that weekly trips, and all these amenities are going to be in a walkable space. And then, the key thing to this project is the location. And David's going to touch on how key this location is.
Okay, so the state and federal governments have made large infrastructure investments in I-540. And these infrastructure investments have already been made. And so the large portion of this project, the traffic coming in and out, will be going to 540 and up to RTP, to 540 back to 55 to go to Holly Springs, to Highway 1 to go south to future developments, and or even to further south, like Southern Pines or Pinehurst, and then up Highway 1 back to Raleigh to go into downtown. So with Viridia's exit ramp completely built out, it creates the opportunity for traffic to be able to flow from this community out onto major subdivision or major roads that don't impact the local municipal roads. Talk briefly about the master plan itself. Brian showed you some pictures, and I'd like to kind of show, or I'd like for your imagination to take over a little bit. And when you think about the town center, you're going to think about your grocery stores. It's going to be the provisions that you need for within the community. It's going to be the hair cutter, the dry cleaning, your local restaurants. And then as you start to work in towards the end of the subdivision from Woods Creek Road, you'll get into the Village Square and Innovation District. And in the Innovation District, you're going to hear briefly, or in a moment, not briefly, but in a moment, you're going to hear from the Calvert Ice Complex. And they're a group that we're partnering with to bring an unbelievable ice complex to this location. That will bring hotels, it will bring restaurants, it will bring nightlife and bars, the good kind. And then from there, I want you to think about going south to your Village Square. And in your Village Square, you're going to have open green space with nights on the theater for Thursday night, where they're going to have movies out on the lawn, right? We're going to have farmers markets on Saturday, so that the local people can come and buy the local goods and services. And that in that Village Square, there's going to be mostly retail and apartments and condominiums where people can live above places where they want to shop, eat, drink, and work and play. As you go from there, you'll have the neighborhood district, which will include a regular subdivision-style neighborhood with houses, both rear load and front load. One thing I'd like for you to note is that the entire subdivision master plan is 4.5 units to the acre at 1,700 units. The other thing we'd like to talk about, and one of the things that the council and the staff has always made very important to us, is the increasing use of commercial development and mixed use within not only this development, but other developments they're looking at in Holly Springs. So in the past, we've been told that Holly Springs is like to focus on having 20% either commercial, retail, development associated, and 80% residential. And I think going forward, the town has decided that they would like to have more of a 30% ratio of commercial and retail development versus residential. So if you can see in this slide, we have a total of 274 acres of developed area. Of that, commercial space is 61 acres. So right there, the straight commercial retail is already 22%, so it's over what has previously been requested. If you look at the total commercial plus mixed use, and mixed use will be a large portion of your retail where there is living space or living area, whether it be apartments or condominiums above it, it goes up to 139 acres. So now you're all of a sudden at 51% with commercial and mixed use. All right, now Brian's going to take over with the open space plan.
Okay, and I'm just going to, I never correct David, but I'm going to say one thing. That neighborhood district is going to be anything but normal. It's going to be exceptional. And I think we're kind of going back on some of the same key points we had with, the ability to create pockets of density. And David pointed out that this is 4.5 units to the acre for the entire property, but we're creating pockets of density so that we can create more open space, preserve more trees, have more trails, have more amenities. And so when you look at these numbers, you'll see, we're going to have, when we do these things, we have to be a little conservative because you never know what you get out there once you start really digging the dirt, right? So we view these as conservative numbers. We're going to have 100 plus acres of open space. That's well over 25% of what this is going to be. And of that, 40 acres at least is going to be developed open space. That means improved parks, improved trails, amenities, plazas, squares, playgrounds, all those kinds of fun things. And then there's going to be the town park designation for land dedication for a 25-acre town park right in the middle. And that's going to located right on Woods Creek Road, right across from the future Wake County Public School sites that we're all excited about. I think that's one thing that David and his team has done a lot is they've reached out and spoke with Wake County and talked to them a lot about, what can we do? We looked at sites on this property for schools. It turned out that this was a better site for them, but it works out great. And so now this is going to be able to easily complement that school site for, as I understand it, an elementary school and middle school. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. So you see, we really are creating by utilizing the PUD, we're creating the opportunity to preserve more open space. And probably the best part of that is then all that open space is going to be connected. We're going to have, in addition to the sidewalks on sides of the streets, the side paths that we're going to have, there's going to be a lot of trails. And this is just the Greenway trails. There will probably be smaller trails within the community that connect to these Greenway trails. But within this, we're going to have 2.6 miles of Greenway trails approximately on site. That's about 1.5 miles of that is already on the town's comprehensive transportation plan. So that's well over an additional mile of Greenway trails going to be with this property. And then looking at 1.2 miles of off-site trails down to the 12 Oaks property to connect to that, so that those folks will be able to come in and appreciate all these amenities, which will be a real added bonus. And then, it's more than just connectivity from being able to get around. It's really connectivity to your neighbors and to the community you're living in. And so we really see this as an opportunity for a connection to nature, an opportunity to connect to your neighbors, have places where you can gather with your neighbors and get around, but also with great amenities such as the Calvert Sports Academy and the Iceplex, a place that can really serve as a focal point for this whole development and for town of Holly Springs as a whole, we think, a place to gather. And I'll hand it off to Marty, who's going to talk about that from Calvert. Where's our switch here? Oh, just hit the mouse button. Okay. That's what I've been doing. The wheel or just that button. Hit it once. You should be good.
Good evening. My name is Marty Lynn. I'm a partner and director of facilities for Calvert Sports. I'm also a licensed landscape architect. So planning and design will be very important to us on our project. And I'm here with our architects from Clark Nexon, the Raleigh office of Clark Nexon, and they're going to speak as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our project. I want to pull the word out of the middle of this slide, which is exceptional. We want, with your approval of the Carolina Springs development, we want to build an exceptional facility in your community, as well as an exceptional program for student athletes. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, about what that means. I want to point out that we are exclusively dedicated to ice sports. There won't be other sports represented within our facility. So these are the kinds of sports that we're talking about. We're going to make a primary commitment to competitive level sports. Obviously, ice hockey would probably be the biggest generator in terms of activity and revenues. But these are the sports that we are currently targeting. That doesn't mean it'll be limited to these sports. We're also going to make a secondary commitment, but a broad commitment to recreational users, especially league teams and private instruction and public skates, things of this sort. And we're developing those programs as we speak. So back to the issue of exceptional. There are many programs in the country that train athletes. There are a few programs in the country that train athletes and also have an academic program associated with that training. There are very few programs in the country that take those two components and add a third component, which is personal development. And that's where we think we differentiate ourselves pretty well. And when I talk about personal development, we're talking about several aspects of that. We're talking about positive character traits, things like integrity, work ethic, reliability, those kinds of things, instilling that in our athletes and our students. We're also talking about life skills. As we know, many athletes can be unbelievably talented, but that doesn't mean they make their way into Division I sports and certainly into professional sports. So it behooves us to work with kids in a way that prepares them for not only sports life in sports, but life outside of sports. And that's what we plan to do. We want to give these kids life skills as they go along. We want to prepare them in terms of understanding personal finance, how to manage their own personal finances, how to communicate, how to be part of a team, what that means, all these kinds of things. In addition to that, we plan to, we don't believe in a one-size-fits-all, so we're going to monitor and assess individuals through the program. We're also going to be advocates for them as they go through and look for opportunities, and as we look for opportunities for them to progress in their sport or in their academics or wherever their opportunities may lead. You know, one of the other aspects that differentiate us, and I just backed off that slide, was that, you know, we'll be making an investment, obviously, in these athletes, student athletes, and we expect an investment to be returned, and that's through their family, their friends, and themselves in terms of commitment. So that's part of our program. Thirdly, we're going to build an exceptional facility. The levels of quality won't be rivaled in this area. We've hired, in our estimation, the best architect in this region to help us with that. And we will make personalized service will be key. We will have concierge services, things of that sort. And we'll be a destination program. So we will not be depending on just local talent. We expect to draw talent from a pretty wide area outside of the local area because of the quality of our complex. So David and Brian have been talking about this walkable experience. And as you can imagine, that's super important for a facility like ours. It really doesn't make sense for us to bring a bunch of customers in on a weekend, and we're talking hundreds of thousands, potentially thousands of people, and have them have to get in their cars and drive 5 miles across town or farther to get to restaurants and other services. So it's real important for us to be located in a community like Carolina Springs, or a neighborhood like Carolina Springs, where those services are available within walking distance. So there's a lot of synergy here that can be created with these projects coming together, like we're talking about retail and services. Shared parking is a big thing because, as you can imagine, when we have events, we're going to have a huge demand for parking. We need to be able to do that in a way that's doesn't create conservation problems, excess stormwater runoff, lots of different things, taking down more trees, you name it, there's constraints associated with that or problems associated with that. So, you know, we're already thinking about how office plays into this mix and how we can share parking. Lodging and housing is going to be a critical issue for us. So, and I'll mention that a little later. Sharing the common amenities, all these things are going to help. We are going to have a foundation, and that foundation is going to provide not just financial assistance, but a lot of different kinds of help to a wide range of people who need it. And this is a list of all the kinds of things we're looking at actively, including the last one, which is a sled hockey, ice hockey program, mentoring by actual professional sports athletes. A lot of these kinds of things we are going to develop and offer to our student athletes. So this is the slide about, you know, the impact to the community, and I think a very important one. On the right, you see some charts, and these are from the year-end report by Wake County on tourism for 2018, and I think this is pretty telling. You can look at the percentages in terms of growth between 2017 and 2018, and pretty remarkable. 11% hotel occupancy, 5.9 for prepared food and beverage. All of these percentages are quite amazing in terms of growth. We're not market analysis people, so these are our own projections in terms of numbers, but we're looking at about 3,000 plus users of our facility on a weekly basis. The lodging impact alone, we're estimating at almost 14,000 room nights. So that's a big number. People, right now, if we put this thing on the ground today, people be driving a bit of a distance to get the lodging. So it's going to be a driver for sure in terms of opportunities for hotel and other lodging. Food and beverage, you can see all the numbers here. We're looking at about a $6 million economic impact on a yearly basis. And you can see what our estimate is based on, a certain number of events per year. And this is really predicated on the early years of our operations, not down the road. Also, job creation. We're looking at about 50 full-time employees when you count all of the, coaching and staff and, everyone in this list here, educators, and then about 50 more that would be either seasonal or contract. So about 100 people total. And now I'll ask Architects with Clark Nixon to come up and share a little bit about the facility with you.
Good evening. Thank you, Marty. My name is Pat O'Keefe. I'm managing principal with Clark Nixon, based in Raleigh, North Carolina. Extremely excited to be a part of this. I'm joined here this evening. Brian Dautel is a senior architect and is really the lead designer for this project. So we're excited to be part of this potential program opportunity, not only as part of the Carolina Springs development, but for the town of Holly Springs as well. In athletic training across the country, facilities matter. And what we're talking about here with the Calvert Sports Academy and Development Center is truly a one-of-a-kind opportunity in the United States. As Marty has alluded, this facility is going to draw not only locally, but within the state and regional, as well as national implications. This facility, when complete, will be on par with some of the most premier athletic training facilities in the United States. We love our sports. This will be an area that the nation is going to kind of come to know and understand, and the town of Holly Springs is going to be kind of name associated with that. So we think that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here. As you can see, this is a very preliminary conceptual image to kind of give you a sense of the scale of this facility. It's going to be, when completed, approximately 240,000 gross square feet with a proposed construction budget anywhere between $85 to $90 million. So this is not an insignificant investment from a construction perspective. So as was specified, some of the kind of areas that we're going to be looking at, and Brian will kind of walk you through programmatically some of the larger chunks of space that are going to be contained within the facility. But as we're looking at this as a precedent facility nationally, some of the areas that are highlights of this project I would mention are energy efficiency, really from a sustainability and energy perspective. Facilities of this size and doing what we're doing, right? Hockey training in the southeastern U.S., that takes a lot of creative thought in terms of how do we design and develop a facility such as this that has minimum amount of impact to the, from an energy consumption perspective in the environment. So certainly water reclamation is going to be a big aspect of what we're looking at. Using solar technologies, particularly for solar heating and hot water, that's one that we're going to be looking at pretty extensively. As PV continues to advance, that's another area that we're going to continue to kind of circle back on, as well as passive daylighting is going to be a big part of this as well. So that connection to the exterior and to the environment. Holistically, from an audiovisual perspective, this is going to be a really robust facility. If you consider if you've had the experience of going to PNC Arena or something of that caliber, AV and acoustics are a big part of any type of arena experience. And so that level of AV integration is going to be pretty consistent with the types of technologies, particularly from a training support perspective, are going to be readily available in this building. It is a multi-level facility. We're not trying to spread this out on one level, taking advantage of existing topography to sink, if you will, certain elements of the program into the ground the best we can is going to be important. Again, we're conscientious of the scale and the mass of a facility such as this, so we're going to be making efforts to try and minimize that impact and that footprint to the greatest degree as possible. We talk a lot about smart building controls and security measures. So again, this is based on that investment that we talked about. This is going to be a highly intelligent, highly complex building. Part of the 50 full-time equivalents that Marty referenced are going to be, individuals that are going to operate and maintain this facility. Again, when you're talking about something at this level of operation and the type of endeavor that this building is, you've got to have the appropriate staff to run this facility. And then certainly for the general public's perspective, intuitive design and wayfinding. So it's going to be obviously easy to get to, easy to understand where the entry and exit points are, easy to find your way around. It's from a scale perspective, it's a large building. And so for those that are first-time individuals that are going to be experiencing this building, it's going to be important to be able to easily find your way around. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who will walk you through a few of the specific pieces.
Thanks. So I'm going to talk through some of the major program elements of the building, the different parts and pieces of the facility, and how they all work together and how they go to support the broader goals that the Calvert program has. So starting with what you see here is a view of an athlete suite, and this is part of the student athlete dormitory. So that is one part of the facility on the site. In the view here, you can see a 4-bed suite for the student athletes, and that makes up one part of this 20,000 square feet portion of the program. And the goal with this portion of the program is to provide safe, secure housing for these young athletes that might come to the facility from out of town to visit as a part of a hockey tournament or some kind of training camp on site. So it's important to give them a safe, secure place while they are visiting and while they're here. But the heart of the facility is going to be the competition venues. So in this image here, you see a view from the main building concourse out onto one of the rinks. And the facility will have 5 sheets of ice, and that includes 3 full-size NHL-size rinks, along with a pair of smaller, slightly smaller training rinks. And those will be supported also with some strength and conditioning gym spaces, an elevated running track around some of the training rinks, and we'll also include about 1,750 spectator seats. And we mentioned previously the importance of integrating technology into the facility. That's an important part of what we're doing here. In this little image down here in the corner, you can kind of see this concept of integrating these rink-side monitors so that coaches and instructors can give real-time feedback to the students while they're on the ice. So they don't even have to get off the ice, but they're able to get some important training and feedback while they're there. And the other important thing about this image here is the overarching goal of incorporating daylight and views into the facility. So you notice on the ceiling of this space, the integration of roof monitors to try and bring natural light into the space to create a bright, airy atmosphere within. And also in the distance, the goal of, as much as possible, creating views out into the site to help connect the building to the site and to the community beyond. I think that's very important. And all of these things go to help support the sort of the athletic development of the athletes. In addition to that, there are these other athlete support areas. This image in particular is of a film room, which goes to help support the training of these athletes off the ice. And again, the importance of integrating state-of-the-art technology into the facility is very important. In addition to these type of facilities, there'll also be academic classrooms, tutoring, counseling centers, study lounges, as well as physical therapy and other kind of support athletes, all going back to supporting this overarching goal for developing these athletes both athletically, academically, and beyond that through character development and personal growth. And then beyond that, the vision for this facility is that it's a very amenities-rich facility as well. So in addition to supporting what the athletes do on and off the ice, there's also supporting the people that support them. So there are facilities there for their parents and for their families and for the larger community as well. So some of those things include food service facilities, farm fresh kind of grab and go canteen for folks while they're there. For the athletes' parents, a wine bar and tap room to help help with that experience as they're there.
I like the sound.
Yeah, that's a good part. And then for the athletes, maybe their siblings as well, some youth gaming centers, multi-sport simulator, study lounges, and for their smaller brothers and sisters, some children's play areas, things like that. And also another important part of that is the skate rental area, so that folks from the broader community can come and experience everything that this facility has to offer as well. So I think that is the end of this part. So those are the main chunks, main pieces of what make up the Calvert Ice Complex.
Good evening. I'm Nate Boken with Ramey Kemp & Associates. Before I kind of dive into the TIA, I want to just take a step back and talk about some of the regional connectivity. David kind of touched on this earlier, but the site's located in a very unique area. We're directly adjacent to both US Highway 1 and NC 540, and we're about 3 miles off of NC 55 as well. So we have great connectivity throughout the region to really disperse that traffic throughout. We prepared a traffic impact analysis through coordination with town staff and NCDOT. That study was reviewed and approved, and I think Rachel kind of explained a lot of those roadway improvements, but kind of a brief overview. There's a total of 10 intersections that we're providing improvements at, 2 traffic signals, and roughly 1.75 miles of widening. And that's both frontage widening as well as some widening there by the interchange. There's also the updated figure that Rachel referenced, and that shows that the fee in lieu contribution there at the Bennett Knoll Parkway and NC 55 intersection, as well as some of the updated frontage widening.
Okay, so it comes around now to what happens in the future for Holly Springs after this development gets up and going. And that comes back to what the original use of this land wanted to be, and that's a future business park. So in order to get this business park a leg up and a first start, Carolina Springs will provide the utility connections, the transportation access, the live, work, and play community that then can become what we feel is going to be the future business park for Holly Springs. Without Carolina Springs, I think it'll be very hard pressed to get the sewer connections. 12 Oaks is out of capacity. You've seen the extensive sewer network that we have to put in with the pump stations. This is a very complex and large undertaking. And I think that Carolina Springs can provide the right type of environment that can support that type of infrastructure and the cost of it. Talking about economic impact, and I don't want to focus too much on this. This report was done before the Calvert Ice Complex was contemplated in the subdivision, and then with that, the additional retail and commercial space that'll be opened associated with it. But just talking about direct investment of over $308 million in just the infrastructure itself alone, including the employment and payroll. So $234 million in the infrastructure, another $100 million in payroll, or $73 million in payroll. And then if you include all of the type of direct, indirect, and induced, it gets to over $844 million. You add 5,708 jobs to the community, and you add $228 million in payroll. I would like to note that these numbers were done before the Calvert Ice Complex and additional retail components were contemplated, which we think will be far greater than this. Tax implications, and this does not hone out Holly Springs alone, but over $26 million in state and local tax categories, $62 million over a 5-year period, and then $68 million when you can include not only the indirect and the induced employment taxes associated in all the different various types of taxes there. So in summary, first I'd like to thank, we've been working on this for quite a while before we've gotten to this point. I'd like to thank the staff of Holly Springs. They've been amazing to work with. They have absolutely helped us go from what I would say was a small idea to a very grand idea. And it's something that we have a lot of passion in now. I have a lot of dedication and passion as well as with these guys. We feel like we've put together the right team. It's taken a while to do it, but all these different pieces are starting to come together to develop this property, which we think can be extremely special. And for that, I think we've been asked before, why a PUD? And I'll tell you, I think that what we've tried to put together, the PUD's really the only way we can do this. I know you guys have worked very hard on your UDOs in order to try and prevent or the need for a PUD, but I think just given that so many different uses that are in this one area, in this one community, it really is the only way to do it. The other thing I'll say is I think it's the perfect location for a mixed-use development. Given the road infrastructure, there's just no better spot to have the retail, commercial, recreational, and residential use that we're asking for. Strategic location, again, I-1, or US 1 and 540. And then again, being unique, which I think is a word that we've all used a number of times to try and describe this community and what is unique about it. And I think not only is it just the Calvert Ice Complex that's come a part of this, but it will attract hotels, restaurants, office users, grocery store chains, and a variety of other retail and commercial users that can combine with a neighborhood of walkability and sustainability that can make an impact on Holly Springs and the residents, not only part of the neighborhood, but not a part of the neighborhood. It is a huge economic impact for Holly Springs. We kind of shown that, and I think it's, if you just kind of hear the entire program in general, I think you can understand how could it not be. And then, of course, the potential for a future business park is made viable by the addition of the key infrastructure improvements as part of Holly Springs and can be further enhanced by this proximity to a new walkable, livable work-play lifestyle. The last thing I just want to touch base on is something we haven't talked about in this presentation. Excuse me, but there is a subdivision that's a part of Apex that's been contemplated for a number of years now, back into the last 2005, 2004, and that's Viridia. And they've had a significant number of problems associated with their developers. They've had arguments, and those developer problems have put a stall on that development. I would argue that if that development gets off the ground, it'll be very difficult for Carolina Springs to do what it needs to do. So I think the quicker we act, I think the better off that we'll be to benefit Holly Springs as a municipality and as a community. I thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you for your very professional presentation. Before you guys leave, even though we're not voting up or down tonight, of course, because it's going back to planning board, is there any quick reactions or comments that you'd like to make while they're all here? Anybody?
Can you just speak to the phasing of this project? I mean, it's a ginormous one. How do you expect this to occur over time, residential and commercial as well?
Yeah, so phasing is an important aspect of it. I think the goal would be you're going to have to. All right, we'll go back to the planning here. Okay, so in order for the subdivision to truly take off, you're going to need to create the entrance at the town center in the beginning. So that part of the development will have to happen regardless. And I know you guys, and it's a viable concern that, when you come into a residential neighborhood, are the residential rooftops going to get delivered and then the commercial and retail space not? Okay, so a couple things that are unique about this property. Number one, this town center area is so perfectly located with the Viridia exit ramp that it will have to be the main entrance into the subdivision regardless. So that'll be there. The second thing is that the Calvert Ice Complex, and they want to start now. So we're going to be working hand in hand with the first site plan to not only put in the sewer infrastructure, but also put in the road infrastructure into the Innovation District. As soon as the groundbreaking happens with their work, we're going to be doing residential work as well. I just don't see how it can't snowball into a large amount of momentum associated with hotels, the apartments, the retail that we're looking for, the grocery. And so I understand that there's a large part of infrastructure that's going to have to go in up front, but it's not only because of Calvert, but it's also because of the way the subdivision is laid out. It's impossible to not do it. So we'll have an entrance that'll come in at the town center, and then our second entrance will be right past the town park. And I don't think that my mouse shows up, but if it does, it's this intersection just to the west of town park. At Woodfield Dead End Road, that's correct, sir.
The packet that I have, it indicates the town center is phase 4, whereas the middle section looks to be the initial phase, followed by the Innovation District and Village Square.
Right, and so we'll have to put in, so first of all one of the things that we've asked for Remy Kemp to do, or the staff has asked them to do, is to stage the TIA along with the different infrastructure improvements that have to happen. And the reason that is because in Site Plan 1, even though Phase 1 is where the town park and the Village Square is, we'll have to put in Site Plan the road that goes through to the town center. So the road will have to be there, and that'll open that up for development and for people to come in and potentially purchase and be a part of that particular part of the subdivision. The other reason that we're going to do these TIA studies is because when we do have people that want that, we'll be able to bring in a phase that might be offset from what that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 set tells you, but then we'll put in the infrastructure improvements associated with the phase that we're doing. So just because it says 4 doesn't mean that 4 is locked in place there. And that's why we've asked them to do those infrastructure by phase.
Any other questions or comments?
I had a question. David, you're familiar with our revision exercise we're doing right now in terms of our master plan?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you considering elements of that plan as you're looking at the types of housing? And I guess I would like to see the next time you present a little bit more on the types of housing. You talked about different densities, affordability.
Yes, ma'am.
When we met, just for concept, you talked about a senior area. So those are the things that are you planning to flesh out a lot more?
Yes, ma'am, and that's a very good point. And as it matures, and I'll go back and answer this with also answering a little bit of your question, Peter. The phasing that you have is what our initial phasing when we started this over a year ago, right? But then as things go on and we're able to pull in more pieces in the Calvert Ice Complex and those things, it changes that phasing a little bit, and that's why we have to kind of change when the traffic improvements come in. And then the thing I'll tell you is, and so to answer your question more specifically, is yes, we're looking at all of those things. We're looking at an age-targeted 55 and up complex as part of our Village Square, okay? And that's absolutely going to come in the site plan aspect of it, and we can bring it in as part of zoning and kind of give you a little bit of that flair, but it won't be set in concrete. But those things are all absolutely parts of what we're looking at. In addition, just architecture in general. I mean, the Calvert Ice Complex and the way it looks, it has a very modern look, and it has a very and we're going to look at blending that within our entire community, because we can't have the Calvert Ice Complex be this one central look as far from an architectural standpoint, and then as part of the Village Square, the Innovation District, we go a complete detached another direction. So all of those things will be integrated.
Yeah, that would be great and I understand things can change, but touching on some of those points, and affordability was mentioned several times in your presentation. Giving a range of what that means would be great, because that's part of what we're hearing loud and clear from
Yes,
our
ma'am.
residents.
David, in regards to the ice hockey complex, had you had a chance of speaking to the folks at the Greater Raleigh Sports Alliance by any chance?
So I'm going to let Marty, why don't you answer that one? Because there have been some conversations, I haven't been privy to all of them.
Sure. There's been some email conversations, but the date has not been set yet.
Okay.
Russ McLaughlin, the CEO of our operation, is out of town, and when he gets back, I'm sure they will be convening.
Okay.
I know that Russ has also spoken with SIG at the county level, and I think they've talked with Lauren as well. So they are working on figuring out how this fits into the greater Wake County in terms of rings.
Okay. Specifically, I can speak to SIG. We're trying to look for a meeting date next week.
Okay. Thank you.
One thing I hear to kind of support what you're talking about, the Iceplex downtown in Cary by Ray's, I've heard people that have kids that go down there for practice at 4 a.m. in the morning. I don't believe them, but that's what I hear. So I just want to throw that out for whatever.
Yeah, and I can add some comment to that. I mean, just in the education process that Russ and Marty have given me and this team on what the Calvert Ice Complex is going to mean, it's not a local issue. It'll be a regional, if not national, type complex. I mean, there will be kids that come from travel teams from across the country that will come to play at this particular location. So it'll really put Holly Springs on the map for an ice complex. And I don't think there's one, and you want me, yeah, please. Please, there might be one other arena that Russ has mentioned to me in the past. I think it's in Tampa that comes even close, and I don't think it's a far and distant second.
So I think I mentioned earlier in my presentation, there is a definite capacity issue in the Triangle. So that's an indication of what you're seeing, the fact that people are showing up at these arenas, iceplexes at really terrible hours. I mean, some of these figure skaters and some of these other folks have to train at really poor times of the day. So we've discovered very early on that if you can't control the schedule, you can't control the ice. That's the name of the game in this business, and so that's what we're going to do, and that's all part of the academic. The whole thing is the way you do that. Otherwise, you can't do that. So.
Anything else for now?
I have a question on the number of residential units. So one of these slides, you had 3 different categories. One of them was residential, 1 commercial, and 1 was mixed use with the number of acres. If you don't have this today, then follow-up is fine. But do we know the number of residential units for each one of those categories? And what the mix would be, townhomes to apartments to single-family dwellings?
It will be broken up in the PUD application for zoning. It is broken up into non-residential and residential uses, and it is broken up by phase. We can work to break it up by individual village square. Any problem with that?
But, just to give you an idea, so the village square, I mean, you can kind of see how it's going to work, right? You got your town center, which is going to be where we hope to have a grocery store, shops, restaurants that can not only serve Carolina Springs, but kind of serve the whole area. More of a draw from outside the area as well, from 12 Oaks and those places need a grocery store nearby. And then when you move into the site, you're going to have, potentially office, hotel, and then the Iceplex in the Innovation District. And then when you get to that Village Square District, it's going to kind of work away from that center core where there will be a Village Square where we may have mixed use, vertical mixed use components where we'll have ground floor retail and apartments or condominiums or age targeted units. And then that will work away from being apartments, from being mixed use apartments to maybe some apartments to townhomes in that core, and gradually work away. It'll get less dense. So you're kind of go from your apartments and your mixed use to your townhomes, and then as you get into your Village Square on the other side, you may still have some commercial components, some apartments, but mainly it'll shift to more townhomes, and then we'll get into more single families as we go throughout the site. So that's kind of how it's going to work. In terms of numbers, it's hard to say, but you can kind of imagine. I mean, that number can get to 1,700 with the use of apartments. So it really becomes a demand for apartments that can drive that, but that's going to your density is going to be focused around that area to maximize that walkability and the mix of uses, and then it's going to gradually work away towards the future school, basically.
Yeah, I can appreciate the detail. I think for the next iteration, some sort of rendering on a concept of what that would look like would be visually helpful for me to visualize it. So going through the phasing plan, I can see 260 units in the residential part of it, but then understanding that bottom floor commercial retail component with mixed use residential on top of it. I mean, I have a couple ideas in my head. If you talk about North Hills or Park West Village in Morrisville, I mean, that's what I think of as you talk through that. But seeing what you have in mind is what I'm interested in. I want to kind of visualize what you guys are thinking in that regard.
We can try to do that, yeah. I mean, it's just the sense of understanding that can change over time.
Sure.
But to give the concept of the image, that's certainly our goal.
Right.
And we can do that, yeah.
That's important.
Any other comments for now?
I have one question for Mr. Boquin on the TIA. When we go through these quite often, and I see all the different intersection improvements that were called out. If you look at Woods Creek Road, you come off of, I think it's Old Holly Springs, you make your left onto Woods Creek Road, and you have 12 Oaks Phase 9, which has widened their frontage to 4-lane median divided, what our CTP calls for. Then you have an hourglass-shaped road back into 2 lanes out to where this project is. If 1,700 residential units plus all the commercial and everything else doesn't trigger a widening of that road between 12 Oaks Phase 9 and the end of the frontage of this property, what ultimately will? is there no capacity consideration for, we're improving intersections, which must mean there's a need for capacity, but we're not calling out that we need a wider road in between those two areas of development?
Yeah, a lot of that is all the driveways. I mean, we have the east-west connector over on the east side there, sending people back over to the highway. And our analysis did include that, that section along Viridia Parkway, or Woods Creek Road. And capacity wasn't at capacity yet. Everything was still level service D or better there by the site. So that's what we, staff and DOT, kind of look for.
Yeah.
Yes, John?
I'll
Yes.
follow up on
Yeah.
that because it kind of relates. And David, I appreciate the discussions we've had over the last couple of years on this. Good project bringing forward, different than we've talked about a little bit, but looks pretty cool. One of the questions we did have when we talked about this over the last couple of years was the access out to the west, with the residential being on the west side. So with the TIA, I was wondering if you had any discussions with NCDOT, Wake County, talking about the school system there with the connectivity Friendship Road with US 1, because I know that was one of the things we had talked about previously. And following up on Councilman Berry's question, it is the 540 avoidance maneuver that we see just about everywhere. So I'm curious as to what your percentages were that were going Viridia Parkway versus going down Old Apex and to Benson Knoll, which I think you're going to get a significant amount of traffic going that direction anyway, just for people that are going that direction for high school, other reasons, other shopping opportunities in the Holly Springs area. So I'd be curious to see what your percentages were as you come forward. I don't necessarily need tonight. We'll talk more about it at the planning board,
Yeah.
but I think that will certainly merit some discussion as far as a western exit point in the future for a project this large, and also the amount of traffic that does not go on Viridia Parkway towards 540 and the wonderful 540 avoidance maneuver.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else for now? Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Very well done. Thanks, Sean. Before we go any further, I'm looking at these numbers, and of course, like everybody else here, has done a little study on this. I'm going to ask Irene Kostanovich if she can come up and give us a hometown economic development reaction concept, call it what you will. And thank you for staying to do this.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening to the town, planning board members as well. So from the economic development standpoint and looking at the Carolina Springs as a project, I would like just to highlight a few important things that we take into consideration when we are looking at projects like this. And as you know, the land where this project is proposed is owned by Duke Energy. And Duke Energy has been a longtime partner of ours in economic development, and their willingness to actually sell the excess land is a pretty new practice that we haven't seen in the past. And that is something that we see as a great opportunity, especially why it means so much to us, that taking into consideration that a lot of Duke Energy land is surrounding our Friendship site. So supporting these kind of practices would definitely open up opportunities for elevating the economic development goals around the Friendship site. David briefly mentioned Viridia subdivision coming north of Carolina Springs in Apex. And he's right. If that's to come first, it would be significantly harder to develop on Holly Springs side. And what I would like to achieve with this project from the economic development standpoint is actually to keep that non-residential tax component in Holly Springs and enjoy the benefit of it. And we know that only a certain percentage of commercial is needed to support the residential all around it, and before the market becomes oversaturated with commercial. So we would like to keep this on the Holly Springs side. Also with residential being less than 80%, commercial office being closer to 25-30%, we feel that this project does bring the opportunity to bring a higher capital investment. We have already heard from the Iceplex in the range of 90 million, and that's just one component of this. And of course, the jobs, which is the great way to advance one of our strategic plan goal areas of shifting the tax base more towards commercial and non-residential. That also aligns with our two other strategic plan areas, which is the responsible and balanced growth, as well as the economic prosperity and diversity. And the ICE complex, I actually looked through my notes this morning, and we first met with them in January of 2018, so over a year ago. They came to us through JLL as one of the site selection firms as an economic development project. At first, we're looking at one of our economic development sites, which we found that they're not, through zoning and our regulation, that was not the use that we were looking for. And for over a few months, we were trying to find really a perfect home for this project because we really wanted them in Holly Springs and wanted to find the area that would really be able, that this project will be a right fit in. So we felt that combining them and brokering that partnership with Carolina Springs what would that achieve is really bringing that anchor tenant on the commercial side of town that will bring the foot traffic that then can support more commercial in that same area. And I, along with your questions with the different housing types, which we are hoping to achieve here is really to attract and engage a talented workforce of all ages and skill sets and backgrounds that support our diverse and growing economy. And probably the most important point from the economic development stand is that the Carolina Springs and that area in our future land use plan is designated as the future business park. But just like the Friendship site, that area lacks utilities. And with this completion of this project, these utilities will now be accessible. And it will just open many opportunities in the economic development arena, as well as now we are getting the Friendship site much closer to the utilities options, which was our goal all along for many years. So those are some of the points that are very important to our department, and I wanted to share those with you this evening. If you have any questions, we'd
Any
like
questions?
to answer them.
Thank you for coming up.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Rena. Counselor, do we need to open and close on this? On the
Yes, sir.
public hearing? At this point in time, I'll open and close the public hearing because no one signed up. And I think we're ready for either more discussion and/or a motion.
I just have another question for Sean. So these specific districts, for example, the Village District has a proposed residential, non-residential count. Is that when the PUD is submitted, is that a guarantee, for lack of a better word? Or given the Village District supports quite a number of different permitted uses, can that change as the market dictates? Should residential have a higher demand, could that commercial aspect be lessened to support that?
So as part of the PUD, the applicant has committed to a minimum level of non-residential use in each of those districts. So that would be the bare minimum without coming back for some sort of major change to the planned unit development. But the applicant has also put in there that they can kind of shift density from one pod to another kind of as market changes. So there is a potential to have the minimum amount of commercial and possibly get a little bit more residential that they've given themselves in the PUD zoning.
And is there any way to tie commercial to residential in that we are not so heavy weighted with residential at the beginning that we're just sitting and waiting on commercial to come?
Because we know the residential is going to come no matter what. How can we be sure that commercial will too?
Through zoning, I'm not sure what mechanisms there may be for them to write into their planned unit development those zoning mechanisms for how many units come before so much commercial. Mr. Stefano, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the developer's agreement that is being contemplated with this project would lay out some specific measures for commercial development. So that would be another method that the council could use to get that commitment for a certain amount of residential dwellings versus commercial.
That's correct. We're proposing to tie a lot of the reimbursements for these infrastructures to infrastructure reimbursement to some performance of the commercial criteria, as far as in limiting the residential. The problem is that the residential is the field of dreams. If you build it, they'll come. The commercial, not so much. So that's much more market demand. But we're going to, do our best to ensure that the thought was that the contractual relationship with the reimbursements would be a good mechanism to ensure that at least the commercial is being constructed ahead of the need to stimulate that commercial aspect.
Got it.
But to answer your question, you can tie very specific geographic components to commercial components. The problem with doing that is not being able to react to market forces and setting the developer up for failure. So it is a work in progress. We're not at final stage of the contractual relations, the contract yet. So there's still some tweaking that needs to be done there.
Yeah, you don't want to see 1,700 homes and maybe a nail salon and a dry cleaner, because all that traffic will be coming into town using, our infrastructure, our already burdened infrastructure to shop and this and that. So we need,
Right, I assume that the TIA is based on full build-out with the specific commercial and residential numbers that are projected, as opposed to if commercial came way later, we're dealing with a lot of residential. Is that a negative impact on the TIA until that happens, or positive?
That's a great point.
So the TIA that was approved with the PUD is based on full build-out through 2027. What will occur with each development plan or each phase master plan that comes in is revisiting that TIA. So if there is an update that's needed or new traffic counts that are needed based on the time frame in which the developments are coming in, then that would be addressed with each individual plan. Does that help answer your question?
And to piggyback a bit on what Sean was asking for, it'd be interesting to know with the TIA what the projections were for inbound traffic from Holly Springs, utilizing resources there versus everything being outbound from there.
Sure, I think that's something that we can look into and provide at Planning Board and Town Council.
Okay.
Good?
I have another question for Sean or maybe Gina. You said at the beginning of your comments with the last PUD we approved as a town was in 2005. Now between then and now, there's been some changes in administration of Main Street Square, 12 Oaks. But could we comment on what sort of level of effort, staff would have to put into the administration and maintenance of a PUD like this, considering that the requirements are defined within the document are different than the UDO, so every development plan that comes back through is a different review, a different set of guidelines we have to go through. Is there any increase of scope of our staff to have to do that, or is this something that we can absorb today?
So that is, mainly one of the reasons why the town has moved away from PUDs is for that reason exactly. We have made several changes to our ordinances over the years to try to discourage planned unit developments because they are difficult to maintain, with each PUD pretty much having their own densities and setback requirements. And every time a resident has a question about wanting to put a shed in their backyard, we're having to go and pull out the specific files to get setback information. and I wouldn't want to speak for our department, that might be best for Gina to answer. But from an administration point, as we're currently working with PUDs, it's not too much more of an effort for our staff to do that. But that's mainly because all of our planning and developments are pretty much built out, so we don't have to go into those files very often anymore. But you know, we've introduced the mixed use option into our ordinance to try to tackle the PUDs that we were getting that were incorporating the commercial and the residential together. So we try to address that with our ordinance so that every project would follow the same standards and we would know what those are. We have development options to try to address the planned unit developments that wanted to do a mix of townhomes and small lot single family, again, to create those common standards that every project had, so it was easier for us as staff and really for the public to understand what their development requirements are.
Just to build on that a little bit, I wouldn't anticipate that there would be a significant staff increase needed in the administration of this. However, as Sean alluded, these are different regulations than our typical zoning regulations. So every phase review, every development plan review does take longer because there is more research and more time in evaluating plans, going back to the PUD master plan to review those to ensure things are in compliance with the proposed zoning that they have. Not that we aren't using and going back through the UDO for every single plan review. You start to know all the regulations, so there is some efficiencies included with general reviews. The long-term maintenance, as Sean had also mentioned, is difficult just with keeping these documents forever. There are many communities that all they do is planned unit developments, and they do have different regulations for every subdivision. So it's not the end-all to have a planned unit development if it is truly providing something unique and something that would not otherwise be able to be achieved through traditional zoning in our community. And that's just a decision that needs to be made and vetted through this process.
Thanks.
Sean, one question. With the potential of 1,700 homes and 12 Oaks being there, a fire station, is that something that we're sort of looking at to see as an option there?
So thank you for bringing that up. The applicant is proposing to dedicate approximately 4 acres for a fire station located here, just south of the town center district on Old Holly Springs Apex Road. So it'd be located right here. Here's 540 Old Holly Springs Apex Road. This is the proposed fire station land dedication.
Okay. Thank you.
Before the motion comes up, I was just curious.
There it is.
The motion is to be at the planning board. Are there any planning board questions that you'd want, that we haven't asked, that you would want to say something ahead so that prepare the applicant?
I just have one, so it can be addressed to the planning board. Something we also did mention over the last couple of years in discussion was the connectivity, and I appreciate the interconnectivity with all the greenways, but it's the external connectivity that we'll also be considering and want to talk about, certainly at the planning board, not only with 12 Oaks, but also, as I mentioned, out to the west, with the potential as we get closer to the Tobacco Trail, and that connectivity out to the west is something else that would be interesting to hear about with this project.
Anything else before the motion? Seeing none.
I'll make the motion to refer 18 UDO 10 for Carolina Springs to the Holly Springs Planning Board for review and recommendation at the Planning Board's regularly scheduled meeting on April 23rd, 2019.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously, and thank you again. Thank you, gentlemen. Going to agenda item 8B. It's a public hearing, semi-annual UDO text amendments. Sean, I think you're still up. We'll wait for a second. Thank you again. Okey-doke, Sean. Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is for the semi-annual UDO amendments that are being put forth by the town's planning and zoning departments, as well as our engineering department. So the purpose of this agenda item is to evaluate those amendment requests, and then the action is to consider the request with either a motion to approve or deny the UDO amendments. Just some brief background. Twice a year, our two departments get together to evaluate the Unified Development Ordinance to discuss if there have been any issues with interpretation, new or modified regulations caused by perhaps changes to just North Carolina general statutes that may impact town development regulations, as well as keep up with development trends and respond to issues and concerns raised by our residents or the development community. And so most of the time with these twice-a-year amendments, we try to keep them to clarifications or technical corrections or minor changes to the ordinance, as well as legal compliance issues. So before you, we have 44 proposed ordinance changes, 32 of which are corrections or clarifications to the text to remove outdated text or sections that were missed with previous amendments. Correct interpretation issues that have arrived or remove some confusing text or language in the ordinance to clarify and make it more clear for our residents and our development community. We're proposing 10 minor changes, including the elimination of car wash facilities due to some changes in our engineering standards. Car wash facilities in multifamily development area. Timing of required open space in our residential communities, increasing the amount of outdoor seating allowance to respond to requests from our business community, prioritize some tree preservation areas in our new ordinance along greenways, as well as 2 legal compliance issues regarding changes in statutes for minor subdivisions and the requirement for environmental areas to count towards our tree preservation ordinance requirements. With that, if you'd like to hear from our planning board representative for their discussion, Mr. McGrath is here to speak if you have any questions.
Any questions, Sean?
I had one question. We had, was it a couple months ago, we talked about maybe having a non-smoking zone outside fairly big buildings. Would this have been the time to add something like that?
We have put that on our study list.
Okay.
So we started these amendments, I believe, before that discussion.
Okay.
We usually start these amendments about 3 or 4 months before we actually make it to council so that we can have thorough staff review.
Okay.
Our next scheduled amendment, we will be getting together at the end of May to do the next round of changes that would come before the town council. I believe it's around September.
Okay.
So we do it once we try to do it once in the spring and once in the fall.
Okay.
But we do have that on our list
Okay.
for the next round to look at.
Other comments?
Yeah, these are a lot of corrections and tweaks and so forth. How does that go about happening? I'm curious. I mean, it seems like a lot of work. I imagine you're not just constantly looking over the documents to see what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
How does this come about?
So this is Supplement 20 of our ordinance. It was adopted in 2002. So we've made amendments 20 times over the past decade or so. There are parts of our ordinance that are very complex, and so if we make changes to one part, we may not realize that that affected another part of the ordinance because that part of the ordinance wasn't used. Or changing a word in one part of the ordinance may have actually ended up changing the intent of another section of the ordinance. So while we try to be very careful to make sure that we're getting all of these amendments all at once, it does happen that sometimes these things are missed. So those are some of the clarifications. Other times we will have somebody ask us a question about an interpretation, and if multiple people in the department have a different interpretation, then to us that means the ordinance is not clear and it needs defining so that there isn't that confusion. There should never be a question as to what does the ordinance actually say. Other times as we bring new staff in, they may read it and say, I have no idea what this means. And to us, that's a big red flag. Okay, if you don't know what it means and you're a clean set of eyes, then clearly we need to do some work here and make this more clear. So that's how those things come about.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. No one has signed up for the public hearing, so once again, we'll open and close. Further comments? I think there's, 3 motions, Sean?
Just one tonight.
2 motions, okay. That's number one.
Motion to adopt ordinance 18-UDO-05, amending Unified Development Ordinance.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, agenda item 8C, again, a public hearing, annexation A19-02, 2995 Mills Lake Wind, and that will be Melissa.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Welcome.
As mentioned, the next item is an annexation. This is a request to open the public hearing and adopt annexation ordinance A19-02. The property in question is 2995 Mills Lake Wind, so this is a single lot. It is adjacent to the existing Logan's Manor subdivision, as you can see shown on the map. It is contiguous to the west to town limits and is slightly under half an acre in size. The request has been reviewed for consistency with all statutory requirements and does meet those requirements. And with that, we would ask that you'd open the public hearing unless you have any questions.
At this point in time, we'll open and close the public hearing. No one has signed up. Other questions or comments? No?
No,
Good?
looked at it, yep.
Okay. Motion?
Motion to adopt annexation ordinance A19-02, annexing .46 of acres owned by Mangrum Building LLC into the corporate limits of the town of Holly Springs.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. That was an easy one. Easy button. Agenda item 9A, consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously again. Agenda item 10A, the Norris Holland Hair House bid. I think we're turning to our counselor on that one. Am I correct? No, I'm not correct.
Gina.
We're going-
I think we're going to tag team because I'm going to pass
All right,
it
tag team.
to Mr.
Gina and
Schifano.
You're up, Gina.
So originally, our plan was to have a discussion and have it led by our town attorney in regards to reviewing bids received for the Norris Holland Hair House. So tonight, what we do want to do is to discuss some next steps in the sale of the property, get some feedback, suggestions, ideas from you as council, and to provide some direction to staff. So the town, as we know, purchased the home in December 2017. In January at our workshop, and then officially in February, the council set a minimum bid to put the home and property up for sale of $60,000. Staff advertised in several different locations, hopefully in areas and places where people that are interested in the renovation of older homes would see it. We had a special open house out at the Norris Holland Hair Home where interested bidders can come out and meet with staff. We also had capital area preservation there so that those that were interested could talk with them about what the responsibilities would be. We had 3 different groups attend that open house. Bids were due by last Monday, March 25th, and no bids were received. We do have 2 parties that are still interested in the house. They are still trying to work out financing, insurance, other types of things, should they get an opportunity to bid. We don't know what their true financial interest is, where they would come in with a bid, things of that nature. So the fact that we don't have any bids, we're sort of back at step 1 and needing to determine how do we want to move forward with the disposition of the house. We can continue to go forward at the place where we were with a $60,000 minimum bid and go out for an extended advertising period, try to do a little bit more in trying to see if there are interested parties for that. We can consider lowering our minimum bid. Capital area preservation, the day of the open house, ended up talking with Sean Ryan and myself and had requested that they would like to have an opportunity to review proposed renovation plans prior to an acceptance of the bid by the town. So this way, if somebody does bid on the house, they end up with the house, that they have a renovation plan that is feasible to meet the minimum criteria that will be established by capital area preservation. So that was something we weren't really aware of prior to the open house. So a lot is happening and just trying to figure out how to move forward. Since this was already on the agenda, supposed to be a bid evaluation, we thought it would be good to at least bring this out tonight. If we don't have official direction today, we want to think about it, come back. We most certainly can do that, but just wanted to publicly be here because it was advertised that we would be here tonight considering bids. Mr. Schifano, do you have anything from a legal?
Nothing further. I mean, there are options to give more exposure to the sale, and if we were to, you know, as far as other advertising abilities and home or longer market exposure time may yield more bidders and a better price for the house. So I would suggest, you know, having a 4 to 6 month bid period, something a little bit more aggressive. And I think we did it thinking there was somebody in the works that was ready and willing and able to go, but yeah, the people that are interested are trying to find financing, and these types of projects are not typical bank finance projects. They, you know, you have to have the money to be able to do it. Banks aren't really going to lend for this type of use, this type of conversion very, very often. Unfortunately, I'm familiar with that. So, you know, I would just suggest a, you know, 4 to 6 month bid period, and we get some increased advertisement opportunities.
Comments?
I con-
Reaction?
I concur with spring and interest rates falling. I think that makes sense to extend the bid period time and look at ways to be advertising it. I do like the third point, though. It seems to make sense, being this is the historical home. Is that something that we have to formally add the renovation plans to our bid process?
The problem is that we would have to spend a little bit of money to have somebody come up with the plans.
Okay.
And then, you know, CAP isn't gonna do that level of work for us for free. We would require some rudimentary architectural drawings for somebody to come up. We could put some proposals together. I mean, certainly we don't want to spend
Right.
more money, but we could, you know, ask around to some renovation architect firms that do this type of rehab work, and they could put together a detailed scope. We could turn that over to CAP, and they can give it their blessing, and that turns into a package that, you know, here's what you have to do in order to go forward with it. Does sort of limit your you know, your willing buyers, you know, willing bidders. The more restrictive, the more that you have to do, certainly does. But right now, it's just an open question, and it's entirely unclear as to what level of rehab you have to do. So, you know, I think that's an important step, but it may cost a couple $1,000s to get that documentation together.
Would that help or hurt somebody trying to get financing?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Probably would help them because you know,
There's a
you'd
plan.
have a set of plans, bankers like sets of plans.
Right.
And then actual bids, you could turn those plans into bids with general contractors. So probably would help, as opposed to now, it's just an open question.
Right.
You must rehab, we don't really know what that means. Buy it, and then we'll tell you what that means. CAP will tell you what that means after you buy it.
Yeah.
So it probably would help.
And I think an alternate to that also could be that we have something in our advertising, and I don't think it would be a complete set of plans that needs to be submitted to Capital Area Preservation prior to their bid submittal, but if there is some sort of acknowledgement that we can receive from Capital Area Preservation that the interested bidder has discussed their plans. Some people may want to keep some of the rear additions. Capital Area Preservation has stated that Depending on what they want to do, those may not need to remain, depending on what kind of addition they may want to add to the house, those types of things. So there could be a lot of individual, different plans as well.
I just want to make sure that we preserve the historical relevance, if that needs to have some sort of capillary preservation cap on that.
Do you two need a motion tonight, or this is input, correct? Or incorrect?
Just give us sort of some guidance as, you know, as long, I mean.
So if we extend to 180 days and next week someone wants to buy it for $60,000, do they have to wait 180 days?
No, you could entertain an offer, and the way that works though is we could bring you an offer, and then we have to advertise that offer, and then anybody has that 10-day period.
10 days, okay.
So even if we said we're going to accept offers till Christmas, somebody comes in and gives us an offer, you can accept it. We advertised a bid opening date and a date certain that was sort of a drop dead date, thinking erroneously that there were people just ready to act on it. And, you know, so if we just leave it rather open-ended, we'll advertise properly and consider bids as they come in, I think is that.
So probably recommendation 180 days. Randy will maintain the grounds because it's going to be summertime.
We will, yes, and we have maintained it since, I think, last fall time period. So we've done some improvements to the house to protect it, to prevent further deterioration. So basic mowing and visual inspections. Fair.
So quick legal question. If we are going to entertain bids as they are potentially submitted, do we need to even have a time frame elapsed versus in 6 months, if nothing happens, we just automatically come back to you? So we're not actually advertising a bid deadline date.
Yeah, right. I
To
think
really
that would be
encourage
better-
people to get your bid in as soon as possible if you're interested.
A better way, if you want to have your bid considered, get it in early. And
Right.
Okay.
Gina, do you have like a media package put together, so if someone says, hey, maybe someone from out of state, I'd like, what do you have on this house? Do we put them in touch with you? Do we?
So we do have a web page that was set up with some basic information about the house. It has the draft facade easement that's going to be placed on the house, as well as a draft rehabilitation agreement out on that web page. It gives some basic information about the house. Yeah, if you get them in touch with either myself or Sean, we can get them general information.
Okay.
So were you
Good.
thinking, have we advertised to the Civil War reenactment community, or, is that what we're trying to do, is think of other ways to be marketing?
Yeah.
Because these are the folks who'd be like passionate about a house that was part of that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm thinking we might have to start, which we all can help with, reach outside of this area.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Good?
Yep.
All right.
Excellent.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gina. Thanks, John.
Agenda item 10B, noise ordinance technical amendments. That would be J. Scott Chase and John Schifano.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council.
Good evening, J. Scott.
Thank you. We're back before you tonight to request an amendment to the noise exceptions ordinance. This is section 12-315. At the last council meeting, we did note the inconsistencies between the two documents that govern noise exceptions related to construction, those being the engineering construction standards and the noise ordinance. With that said, excuse me, the noise exception times are from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's in our engineering construction standards, and Saturdays from 8 to 6 p.m. And the noise ordinance is from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. So we have those inconsistencies between the two documents. We had this chart for your review at the last meeting, and so I'll entertain any questions you have about that at this time.
Questions, Scott?
Excuse me.
We good? I think we're good? All right, let's hit the motion, please.
Motion to adopt ordinance 19-02, amending section 12-315 of the Holly Springs Code of Ordinances, Chapter 12, Article 6, Division 2, as submitted by the town of Holly Springs.
Second.
Motion been made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jay Scott. I love that.
Mayor,
Yes?
I think we're in other business. Our friends from the Holly Springs United Methodist Church have been sitting here since 7:05 when they presented. They had asked us to consider a waiver to their, to the fee for the bench.
Well, I wondered if that is something we should talk about tonight, or do we take it a different step? It's up to you.
Either way, it's the pleasure of the council.
All right. Comments?
I have some background of when this came up. I think originally there was some confusion about you can go forward, and then you needed a waiver, and I think we have some new guidelines that we want them to adhere to, which needed the permit, but it was just something that they weren't expecting through different conversations. In reflection of how well the United Methodist Church works with our town, with our events around Holly Fest and things like that, I would like to propose that we put a waiver in place for that fee.
I'll make a motion.
Is
You
there,
wanna discuss
does
it
anybody have
first?
any questions or?
I'm just concerned about the precedent it sets. I mean, we could then see a stampede of nonprofit organizations walk in the door that want a waiver for similar fees for other reasons. I'm sure and I'm not versed in all of the circumstances that surround this. So if there's, something out there we need to hear, maybe we need to have that discussion first. I can sympathize with their situation, but as a homeowner, I had to pull a permit on my house. I had to pay a bunch of fees, it's part of the process. And I just think it sets a bad or a difficult precedent for us to waive that fee for one group, and then we're going to have more that are going to want the same treatment. So if we create special treatment one time, we'll have to repeat it again in the future, and that's my concern.
And that's a fair concern. I think in this situation, they were told they wouldn't need one, and they went to their board, and then they came back and the situation changed. So, but I hear you in terms of precedents.
Have we done this before?
You have waived permit fees for service projects before? Things that were of a sort of general concern to the town. I frankly, I'm sorry, I don't know what.
No, I kind of remember like an
Eagle
Eagle
Scout
Scout projects, things like that have come before us.
Years ago, too.
Yeah, so,
I'm fine if we want to talk about it more. So I would be prepared to recommend that we waive tonight, but I understand.
yeah, I understand.
That's fine.
What was the dollar amount again?
It's $150.
150. Okay. Who else wants to chime in on this?
I definitely understand Councilman Berry's point, because the other times we've done that, we've said the same thing, that we worry about the precedent, and we've been lucky that we haven't been stampeded, but I'd be for waiving it.
I think their intent is for public use versus just for their church.
Right, and because of the relationship we've had many times with this specific.
If there's a public use aspect to it, then
I
I'd
agree.
be entitled
And
to it.
I'm agree if it's
I'm most
there.
there.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because we kind of have a partnership in many ways.
Yeah. We do.
Well, it's partnership as well as a public use, so it's not for a nonprofit, but
Right.
it's more than just that, so.
Yes.
I'm inclined to approve a waiver.
Okay. Well, you heard from everybody. Let's have I'll go back. You want to make the motion?
I'd like to make a motion to waive the fee for the park bench project at the Holly Springs United Methodist Church.
A second?
Motion been made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
1 nay. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me. Have we missed anything else?
Mayor, I was wondering, given that after public comment, it goes a long time before we have a chance to talk about folks that have been for public comment.
About what, please? I'm sorry.
After public comment, so it was done around 7:10, and then if folks want to hear what we want to talk about, is there a way that we could maybe alter the agenda sometime to say, is there a post-public comment discussion that the council can have if there are questions or something we want to do? Is that, I think other towns have done
I've asked
that.
for this before, or how we want to handle that, because usually we don't respond, but there are circumstances where we can, so that's something I think we need to talk about, how we want to handle that.
Well, usually it's a judgment call, but normally, we've said this forever, we do not respond or negotiate or whatever during public comment.
Right.
I'm open. I'm firm but flexible.
It's almost like having a post-public comment town council entry, if we want to do like a public comment.
So, like where we would say, okay, this is something we need to talk about,
Kinda like
get
what
more
we just-
information, talk about later, or is this something we can decide on now?
Like a
like what we're just
5B,
doing?
like a 5B, right. Instead of, there's a public comment section, and then is there a response that we want to have in either figuring out that there's a next step, or,
Yeah, as long as there's no decision-making
Right.
at that point, but maybe more information or
Q&A.
figuring out where it needs to go next, unless it's a trivial
Right.
decision.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it'd be nice to have the time and the research.
Exactly, that's what the whole, but a lot of times, you're right, people do want.
Well, rarely we have done that, but we didn't, I don't see any problem with putting a 5A or whatever.
5B, yeah.
5B, yeah, that's no problem.
Is it something?
Linda, we okay on something like that?
our meetings are so long, it's a shame to have somebody sit, although they're entertaining, and I'm sure you learned a lot, but
All right, we'll look into that. We'll try to do
Okay.
that.
I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Anything else on that point? If not, let's go to C, which is going to be Huston's talking again. Crosswalk safety, as usual. I still think we're making progress. We're not there yet. But like I said a couple months ago, I found out that Raleigh only has one flashing, according to the mayor, one flashing cross light. So I felt kind of good about what we've got. We have 4? I think we've got like, well, I thought 6 or 7. I'm not sure of that.
4, 5, there's 6, I think.
6, maybe 6?
That's what I thought, yeah. That's what I thought.
So anyway,
I love it.
just a reminder, the ground has been broken for the hospital. We're looking for, man, I always hate to say this. We're looking for 1.5 to 2, maybe less, don't know. Building a hospital is quite different from building a medical building, as all we know. So they know we're anxious, they're anxious, we'll do our best. But that almost gets us to the point where you don't have to leave Holly Springs unless you want to. There's a few more things coming, but that's my story and I'm sticking with it. Who else?
While we were sitting here tonight, there was some breaking news. Was at the last meeting that we had, these 6th graders from Holly Grove Middle School came to talk about their Samsung Solve for Tomorrow, about the school bus stop. They won national prize.
Oh.
gotta get
Total
them
of
back.
up to they went up to $180,000 for technology and computers. With they had won $50,000.
Right.
And now they went to New York, presented where there were mostly high schoolers.
It was amazing, their presentation.
It was
great.
incredible. They beat them out to win the $100,000 grand prize. Also won $10,000, being named the Community Choice winner. And then there were a couple of other little things. So
Fantastic.
yeah, we'll have to have them back. But I
Absolutely.
thought that was very exciting. And again, these were most 6th and 7th graders.
7th grade.
Yeah,
For myself.
mostly just.
I got a piggyback if you don't mind. It's been 3 days ago, I think, no more, 4 days ago. The lady who's the teacher there asked me to come over because they were doing a big bye-bye shindig for the kids.
Yeah, a clap out.
Well, let me tell you, number one, I got very tired because we went up and down the school. But what I saw was something I'll never forget. Every student in that school, all 1,250 or whatever it is nowadays, was out in the hallway as we walked by with the kids in front and the teacher and I in the back. And I was fist pumping everybody I could. And they were all screaming, yelling, ranting, raving, loving, blah, blah, blah. The dancers were there, the band was playing. It was something I can't forget. It was for those kids.
It's called a
Good
clap,
for the
a
kids.
clap out.
It's good for the kids, it's good for Holly
That's
Springs.
fabulous.
Okay, thank you for giving me that. Who else?
I just got one thing. About a month or two ago, we got an email from a resident about, what do we do with our old little batteries that we have from toys? And kudos to Randy and your town staff to implement a process to allow residents to drop off their batteries, not the car batteries, but your batteries at the Hunt Center, Town Hall,
Public Works.
And Public Works. So kudos for when a resident reached out and had a concern, and the staff implemented a process. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I thank staff, and it's always great to get feedback and ideas from community residents, and sometimes, they have the best ideas. And we have another one coming from another community resident around trash cans at the cemetery. And
Which
so
happened,
we're-
right?
we're, I think they just went in earlier this week or late last
I
week.
was told that happened.
And so, little things like that, but they mean a lot in the community, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to the staff.
Anybody else?
Piggybacking on that, I wanted to highlight how the staff was wonderful in helping the Holly Springs Rotary Club prepare the holes they planted. We planted, I think it was 23 crepe myrtles on Saturday. We were done in less than an hour, and it's a great addition to the park. And the mandate came from the International Rotary Association, where the president said, we want trees planted all over the world with all the different clubs. And they have one more tree they want to plant as a special tree in honor of Parish Womble. So that should be coming up, I think, as soon as we work with Adam and team and Leanne. So, but your staff was wonderful. They helped us. Adam even ran a 5K and came over and helped us plant too. So it was fabulous. Thank you.
That it? Manager's report.
Mayor and council had no report tonight.
You're passing.
Thank you. I'll pass.
Counselor?
The manager and economic development director would like and maybe the assistant managers would like a word with you about a economic development incentive proposal for the Holly Springs Business Park area, not particularly that, pursuant to 143.318.11A4.
Excellent.
Of the exception to the open meetings law to discuss some utility improvements in the business park.
All right, someone make a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for sticking with us.